I'd like to give a congratulations to Mr. Ray Epps on avoiding jail time, despite privately saying he orchestrated January 6th and being seen on camera numerous times advocating people enter the building, which is, of course, inciting an insurrection by Democrat standards. And then, of course, I'd like to give an honorable mention to Enrique Tarrio for beating the record of Ray Epps by getting 20 plus years in prison despite not even being in D.C. So, of course, the internet is rife with individuals accusing Ray Epps of being a Fed because it makes quite no sense that of all the people that have been charged, some 1,700, many of them have received jail time, and some of them did literally nothing, like walking around. Ray Epps actually was at the front line where they breached the barricade. He was telling people to enter the Capitol premeditated, and he admitted on camera he knew that doing so was a crime he would be arrested for. He gets no jail time, no travel restrictions, a $500 fine, 100 hours of community service. Oh boy. Donald Trump was in court today. His legal team was arguing he's immune unless impeached and convicted. And what's really got all the Democrats quite angry is that his legal team argued, and I would say correctly, that a president could assassinate a political rival and they cannot be criminally charged unless they are impeached and convicted, which makes absolute sense. Of course, the judge just kept saying, "You mean this could happen?" And the lawyer kept saying, "Yes, but any reasonable Congress is going to impeach a president who does that. If a president is engaged in official duties, you can't criminally charge him for it unless Congress deems it to be crimes and high crimes and misdemeanors, and the Senate confirms through conviction." And then, of course, ladies and gentlemen, the story that everybody really wants to talk about, but, you know, we're a serious show here. Secret Jewish tunnels. Yeah, there's a video of a Jewish man climbing out of the sidewalk in New York City, and there's a video. And my favorite tweet is, imagine witnessing this happening, but not having your phone, and then trying to explain to people that a Jewish man climbed out of the sidewalk from a secret tunnel underground without sounding like an anti-Semite. So this happened. The police showed up. They tried filling in these secret tunnels. Apparently, some of these young Jewish men started fighting with the police, and a dozen or so got arrested. Everybody is wondering what the is going on there. So we'll talk about that plus a whole lot more. Before we get started, my friends, head over to castbrew.com. If you scroll down, you will see Alex Stein's Primetime Grind, 2 times caffeine coffee. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, drink responsibly. Drink your coffee responsibly. 2 times caffeine's no joke, but we do have it available because some people like a higher caffeine content in their coffee. This new coffee is accompanied by a new commercial, which we have up on X. If you go follow me at Timcast on X, you can watch it pinned to my profile starring Alex Stein. And, you know, just don't freebase coffee and don't snort coffee, but just drink your coffee responsibly. But watch the commercial. It's a whole lot of fun. And by buying Cast Brew coffee, you are supporting the show and getting the best cup of coffee you'll ever have in your life. Because we make a mean cup of Joe, I got to tell you what. And I'm also a big fan of our Sleepy Joe decaf. And if you're looking for a good gift, buy the Sleepy Joe decaf for your Democrat buddies, because even they will find it funny. It's a good name. Shout out to the Timcast members who helped come up with these names. Head over to timcast.com, click join us, become a member to support our work directly, because this show is possible thanks in part to viewers like you. As members, you help make this show possible. We've got a flight right after this show to Iowa so that we can host a podcast/town hall event with Vivek Ramaswamy. Now, I must stress, inclement weather has us worried. We are being told that the flights may be shut down, completely out of our control. But I told them we will make this happen because a little snow is not going to stop us. So right now we're Maryland. It's raining, and it's mostly not that big a deal. It's light rain. But in Des Moines, apparently it's heavy snow. And we're told that the airport we would be landing at, because it's a private jet, should be fine. It's up to the pilots, however, whether they want to actually fly through this weather. I think by the time we'd be landing, which is going to be like 3 a.m., things should be okay. But let me just stress, we're going to be leaving here at 11:30, arriving at around 11 after we wrap the show, arriving at the airport by about 11:30, getting on a plane immediately, landing. Then we've got to rush to our hotel, set up the show, and I got to record my morning show. Not a very easy thing to do, and also very expensive. But thanks to your support as members, we're able to do this and work our fingers to the bone to make cool stuff happen. So seriously, become a member if you appreciate the work we do, support the work we do. And we're going to have that members only show coming up for you tonight at 10 p.m. Smash the like button right now. Subscribe to this channel. Share the show with your friends. Joining us tonight to talk about this and everything else is Mayor Trent Staggs.
Great to be with you.
Who are you? Who are you? What do you do besides being a mayor, I guess?
Well, I've been in Utah now in elected office for 10 years, and I'm running for United States Senate. Have quite a business background too. Helped take a company public in the energy space, and have my wife Alicia and I have 2 fantastic kids, and just proud to be running.
Right on. Which city are you the mayor of?
I'm the mayor of Riverton, which is just south of Salt Lake City, probably about 20 minutes south there. And
man, talk about a beautiful place.
It is. It is.
It's on. I remember the first time I drove through, just the mountains on either side. It's indescribable.
It really is. I mean, when you go away to somewhere really flat, like say Texas or somewhere else, and you come dropping in and you see how tall and majestic those mountains are, it's just wow. Every time I come back.
Go to like Chicago and the suburbs, the Great Plains, just all flat, nothing but sky and buildings. And then you take a vacation, someone like me, you drive through Utah and you're just, it's amazing.
Yeah, other areas think they have mountains. We really have mountains in Utah, and skiing, of course,
Right on. Well, thanks for hanging out. That should be fun. We got Seamus Coughlin.
My name is Seamus Coughlin. I have a YouTube channel called Freedom Tunes. We do animated political cartoons. We upload at least once a week, so I want to ask you all to go over there, subscribe, check that out. It's a lot of fun, and I'm excited to be back on the show.
How you doing, everybody? My name is Phil Labonte. I'm the lead singer of the heavy metal band All That Remains, a very failed musician, anti-communist and counter-revolutionary.
And I am Serge. I am a Utah man I am. And I'm excited to have you here, sir. Thank you very much. And let's get to it.
Let's go. Our first story from the Washington Examiner. Ray Epps gets no jail time, sentenced to 1 year probation. A man widely accused by former President Donald Trump supporters of covertly working on behalf of the FBI during the January 6th Capitol riot was sentenced Tuesday to a year of probation for his actions that day. Ray Epps, 62, pleaded guilty last fall to 1 misdemeanor for disorderly conduct in a restricted area. The DOJ had asked that Epps get 6 months in prison, a relatively harsh sentence for that charge. While Epps argued that probation and restitution were appropriate penalties, he received restitution of $500. So here's the big issue. And we'll just keep it real simple for you. He's the one guy on camera orchestrating, and I mean that literally, telling people to go into the Capitol. If there is any orchestrating that is documented, is that. You take a look at the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers or whatever, and it's like vague, we're going to go, who knows what's going to happen. There's no real plan. It's even admitted in these official statements that they don't really have a plan. Enrique Tarrio was not in Washington, D.C. on that day. They sentenced him to 20 years. Ray Epps not only was there, but was advocating for people to go in, is on camera saying he knows he'll be arrested for inciting this. He says, I don't want to say it because I'll get arrested, but I'll say it. And they say it. And then he tells people to go in the Capitol. And then there's a video of him at the front barricade when it's first breached, whispering into a man's ear. And then they breach the barricades, storm the Capitol grounds. Yep. And this guy gets probation. We have so many stories of people like Brandon Strzok, for instance, never went in the building, prison. How about Owen Schroyer? Did not go in the building, prison. Many people are rightly wondering why it is this man, Ray Epps, is not getting any jail time, but more importantly, why he has been defended by the corporate press. Here's my conspiracy theory. He's actually just everything is perfectly straightforward, and the corporate press is defending him. That's the real conspiracy. He actually is some bumbling Trump supporter who advocated them going to the Capitol, and the DOJ is like, let's go real easy on him and get our buddies in the press to defend him, so it makes everybody think he's the bad guy.
Well, it's a very interesting situation, and the way that it's framed is very telling. So this article and many of the other articles you'll read is Ray Epps, who right-wingers and conservatives and conspiracy theorists allege was involved with the federal government in some capacity or needs to be punished more harshly than he's being punished, rather than Ray Epps, who whispered in the ear of the first person who broke down a barricade, or Ray Epps, who was inciting the riot a day before and telling people they should enter the Capitol and who was then called a Fed.
Yes, but
they never point out what actually happened. But they never point out what the evidence shows. They always point out, this is what right-wingers think. This is what conservatives think. This is what conspiracy theorists think, not this is what happened.
Right. And the very, very important thing about these videos is Ray Epps saying that he knows he will be arrested for what he is about to say. And then he says it. He knows what he is saying is incitement to illegal activities. Mm-hmm. And they avoided charging this guy for a very long time.
Yep. And their argument was he never set foot in the building. But like you said, Brandon Straka and Owen Schroyer are both people who never entered the building either, and yet they were charged and they were in prison. And Brandon Straka, who we actually had on the show, had to plea down from like 20 years or something like that. They were trying to lock him up in federal prison for a very long time. And he never entered the building. They lied about the evidence. They said that he was egging people on and telling them to go into the building when it's not clear that he actually was, because you can't see him on camera. And according to him, it's someone off camera yelling it. We actually have footage of Ray Epps telling people to go in and whispering in someone's ear. And he gets 6 months probation when they were trying to charge Brandon Straka and lock him up for 20 years.
This is the most blackpilling situation I think that's going on in the United States right now. The way that the people that were at the Capitol on the 6th are being treated, the way that the government has really, set the conditions so that it's clearly favoring people and clearly going out of its way to essentially, prosecute people for things that are protected under the Constitution. And it's blatant. And the real disheartening thing is not that the government is doing it or people in the government would do it, because they're all garbage anyways.
Yeah.
It's that there are so many Americans that support it. And this goes back to the fact that America is going through, in my opinion, America, and a lot of other people too, America is currently going through a cultural revolution like they had in China. And what that means is the fundamental principles that our country is founded on. And I'm not talking about religion or any of that kind of stuff. I'm talking about simple, basic things like you are innocent until proven guilty. Those things are literally being ignored currently in regard to January 6th, in regard to Donald Trump, in regard to also any number of federal and state cases that have been brought against people that have the wrong politics. People in other countries can see this. People in other countries clearly see this. Whatever your opinion on Donald Trump, when you have people like Glenn Greenwald, who is no Trump fan and is no right winger, can clearly see this. And then you can have people like that are as silly as Alex Jones can see this, and they're both saying the same things. And the only people that don't see this are the actual establishment. The only people that if you are paying attention to what's going on, it is difficult for me to believe that you are being honest if you can't see that there is political persecution.
And I'm glad that you pointed out that this is very reminiscent of the Cultural Revolution. What we're seeing is a kind of neo-Maoism, where 100%. They accuse people of being enemies of the state or the establishment, needing of ostracization or even imprisonment on the basis of their political values. And it's also ranked based on their ethnic background, their immigrant status, whether they're conservative or not, right? What Mao did is he created a series of privileged classes. And then he told the people, you have to go after the privileged classes, and to be labeled as a member of one of these privileged classes in Mao's Cultural Revolution was basically a death sentence or a sentence to be imprisoned. But let me just be perfectly clear. That is where this kind of thing ends. You don't start singling out ethnic groups and political groups and start saying that they're evil and need to be ostracized and removed from society and just have that stop. Like, there's either backlash and it stops happening, or it ends up getting violent and they try to harm people. And we already see they're trying to lock people up on the basis of their political values.
Yes, and to your point about the identity stuff, Mao had red and black identities. If you were a communist, you had a red identity, and they used those identities to turn children against their parents. If your parents owned a shop or owned property or owned everything or owned anything, or you were just looked at unfavorably, you believed you were not a communist or whatever, you had a black mark on your family, and the children would go to school and they didn't want to have black marks. They wanted to have red identities. They wanted to be good communists. They wanted to get along with their friends. They didn't want to be weird. It was all peer pressure, which is what we're seeing now. All of that stuff, all of these things are reminiscent of Mao's Cultural Revolution. It's happening currently in the United States because actual Marxism, economic Marxism, vulgar Marxism does not work. So they're trying to use a racial vector. All of the talk about race that you're seeing now, and everyone agrees there's constantly talk about race. That is just a vector of attack. And it's all because it's a Maoist cultural revolution going on in the U.S.
Yeah, it's crazy to me that you have not just that concept, like you said, that it's been turned on its head, innocent until proven guilty. It's that equal justice under the law, right? That is the application. That is what is foundational to our country. And you're not seeing that. You've got this two-tier justice system that's going on. I see it ever since running for U.S. Senate. I'm trying to replace Mitt Romney here. And going around and talking to so many Utahns. I've talked to many that actually were there on January 6th. Wow. And it blew me away to listen to the story of one woman in particular who was there with her son-in-law. They had two different judges, right? She unfortunately got the harsher judge. And for just walking around 30 days in a federal penitentiary.
In the building?
In the building. All she did was walk around for, I don't know, just maybe 15 minutes max, and did 30 days in a federal penitentiary in Washington State. And she said, I'm the only one I know of that's done time for a misdemeanor.
More time than Ray Epps.
More time than Ray Epps.
This is what's amazing is that a large portion of the convictions in the January 6 cases are people who showed up after the fact, and there's no barricades that had been ripped down. Yeah. The doors had been opened by police. Joe Scarborough of MSNBC on January 7th, CNN reports, he said, you opened the effing doors for them. Mm-hmm. So there are people who don't know what's going on. The Capitol is normally open, unrestricted. The police open the doors and even fanned some in. They go to prison. Mm-hmm. This is crazy what's happening in this country. And when you look at what's going on the southern border, I got to be honest, man. Look, I don't think all hope is lost. I certainly think we have been winning, and there's a lot of people who don't want to accept it, but we've got tremendous cultural victories. I mean, the fact that Dave Chappelle can say the jokes that he can say to mass applause from a DC audience shows we are winning this culture war. But of course, when you back an animal into a corner, they will lash out violently. And as the establishment machine begins to lose power, they are going to act irrationally and violently. And that's what we are now seeing. We are seeing people who are just bumbling, tourists in DC who went to see a speech, walked around, and go to prison.
It's horribly depressing. And as mentioned earlier, this all ties into whether or not you are a member of one of the favored identity groups.
Yep.
Look, big, bad, scary white person, insurrectionist, right-winger inside of the Capitol, well, that person is going to do prison time, right? Or they're going to be more likely to. They're certainly going to be frowned upon in the media. And that's why people are asking, why is nothing happening to this Ray Epps guy? Because he is every single thing, and he's a member of every identity group that we're constantly told we're supposed to hate. This is an older guy who seems to be working class, who's a white conservative male who is inciting a riot and was inciting a quote unquote insurrection, and he only gets probation. Now, don't sit here and try to tell me that that's his white privilege kicking in and people not wanting to prosecute him and the system not handling him because he's a white guy, or because conservatives are actually secretly privileged and we're getting this wrong, because other conservative leaning people who are more politically active have gotten in far more trouble in this instance for far less. The reality is there is information that's being withheld for us on his involvement. That's all I'll say.
He did more to incite the riot or to incite violence and incite the riots and stuff than Donald Trump did.
Absolutely.
Donald Trump was
I think
impeached
without
twice.
question.
It is. I would be remiss if I did not end this segment on January 6th by pointing out the facts of the case that January 6th was an inside job, was adjudicated as an inside job, and is, as a matter of fact, based on CNN's reporting, January 6th was an inside job. But don't take my word for it. First, let me give you the definition of inside job from the Oxford Dictionary. Inside job is defined as a crime committed by or with the assistance of a person living or working on the premises where it occurred. Notice they say committed by or with the assistance of. Inside job is a fairly broad term. It means that someone inside allowed or helped or assisted in this happening. Of course, then we have this story from CNN. Man who said January 6th was magical acquitted in U.S. Capitol riot case. A federal judge found Matthew Martin not guilty of 4 federal misdemeanors, 4 related to trespassing. Martin had successfully argued that a U.S. Capitol officer waved him into the building. At least one video played during the trial appeared to show an officer moving his arm in a waving motion. That is to say, CNN has confirmed a video exists of an officer waving at Matthew Martin, for which Matthew Martin interpreted as being waved into the building, and that a judge agreed that the police officer appeared to be waving him into the building. By all means, CNN, you are allowed to argue that he was waving at police officers, but that's not the point. With the assistance of a Capitol police officer, this man entered the building. But don't take my word for it. Why don't you? Oh, do I not? I'm sorry. I've made a terrible mistake. I did not pull up the Joe Scarborough article. I pulled up the Vivek one. Sorry, silly me. Joe Scarborough lambasts Capitol Police. You opened the effing doors for them. CNN reports, and that's it. Without refuting, they report Joe Scarborough saying outright, they politely opening the door for terrorists who had scrawled on the door, murder the media, he added. Joe Scarborough's argument is that these people were violent terrorists and the police opened the doors politely for them. Why? Let me just get a show of hands. How many of you would view that as assistance?
That's assistance.
1, 2, 3.
I'm gonna say it's
that is everyone in the room raising their hand that police politely opening the door for what Joe Scarborough calls terrorists as assisting them. I don't see why police would politely open the door, according to Joe Scarborough. So according to MSNBC and CNN, there is adjudicated, a judge said, cop waved this guy in, so it appears. Well, that sounds like it's reasonable to say it was an inside job. So when they claim Vivek Ramaswamy was wrong that it was an inside job, Vivek said it appeared to be. Well, certainly based on CNN's own reporting, it does appear to be an inside job. But I would say, considering we know the police did open the doors, took selfies with people, so much so that MSNBC got very angry about it, and CNN even reported on both instances, inside job is beyond confirmed in every conceivable way. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. But I suppose now we can jump to the next story in the January 6th case. This is from the Daily Mail. Judge asks Trump lawyer if president would be immune from prosecution for using SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival in explosive courtroom showdown. This is a really, really great story. And it's a very important story for all of you. This is an excellent way to help people understand that these issues in law are nuanced and the headline does not accurately portray what is being, the information being conveyed. First, let me start by shocking all of you by saying it is a fact and it is true. In this argument, it makes absolute sense and it is reasonable and rational to argue. If the president ordered the assassination of his political rival, you could not prosecute him unless he has been impeached and convicted already. That's the statement. The judges tried to make it seem like it was some egregious and shocking thing that such an argument would be made, but it does make sense because there actually is an official an argument for an official course of action in which a president or politician would assassinate their rival. I'll give you a simple explanation. President A learns through the Senate Intelligence Committee or the House Intelligence Committee or whatever, Foreign Affairs, top secret information that a political rival of his has been making deals with a foreign adversary and is going to be meeting with them in a foreign country to deliver top secret nuclear code information from the United States. Unfortunately, they discovered this much too late and they need to put a stop to it. The president goes to a federal judge who reviews the evidence, their arguments are made, and a warrant is issued. The president then orders this man must be stopped by any means necessary. After this political rival is caught in the act of selling state secrets, an act of treason, when U.S. forces try to apprehend and arrest him, he resists and draws a weapon and is killed by the president's forces. The assassination of a political rival. Now, perhaps you can argue that they mean like just taking him out. In that instance, as I described it, there would be no impeachment. Congress would say, no, we were the ones that delivered the intelligence that this man had betrayed his country. And a judge signed off on the warrant for his apprehension and or execution for treason. In which case, you could not prosecute the president for taking this action, as no one in Congress would believe a crime had been committed. Now, if Donald Trump or any president just straight up killed their political rival for political power, instantly in Congress, they would be impeached and convicted, and then they could be criminally charged. The important thing to understand here is that were this to not be the case, as Democrats are arguing, this could mean that states or elements of the federal government could criminally charge a president whenever they feel like it, before, during, or after they're even in office, if they feel threatened by him. And the founding fathers were concerned this would disrupt the political process. A man announces he's going to run for office. So what happens? A rival political actor in government decides, I'll criminally charge him so that he can't win. And that's exactly where we are.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, right? Because it's really a question of process, as you mentioned. So saying something like he would have to be impeached first is like saying he would have to be arrested first. It's just part of the process. It doesn't mean it's something he's allowed to do. It means that we actually have a process laid out for how that's taken care of.
This seems like there is a process here. Trump's lawyers have made a completely sound argument that I believe is correct. You can't accuse a president of committing crime. So in this instance, we're talking about Trump investigating voter fraud. Mm-hmm. It's actually the duty of the executive branch to investigate voter fraud, should there be any. But because there's a conflict of interest in that it was Trump's election, they're arguing it was criminal activity. Well, I believe it is correct. Trump should be, there should be an investigation as to conflict of interest. The determination was he was impeached and then he was acquitted. How could you criminally charge someone who's been acquitted for this very thing? They're going after him. Why? The arguments to the Supreme Court are the point of the Democrat process. So they're in a federal appeals court right now and making these arguments on immunity. And the Supreme Court is going to hear Trump's case on the ballot issue. But right now, if these judges come out and say the president is not immune, then we are inching towards absolute dictatorship and the collapse of the republic.
Oh boy. Yeah, that's a pretty great takedown. Great analysis right there, because you're right. There is a process. There is a procedure that we have to go through. I mean, he has to be impeached. He has to be convicted in the Senate. That hasn't happened here. And that is the argument exactly that the Trump attorneys are making, is that they have a presidential immunity, that it is there for the reasons that you've cited.
This case they're bringing against him is the offense. The offense is not to criminally charge Trump. That's a byproduct. The offensive attack against our republic is this: for the judges to rule presidents can be criminally charged. Then the next time an America First candidate, let's say in 8 years, Vivek Ramaswamy is the front runner. What will happen? Federal agents, to prevent him from winning, will file criminal charges against him. Let's say he actually gets elected. Let's say there's a backroom deal. And he goes to the establishment and says, look, there's a few things that I want to do for this country, but I agree to play ball with you on foreign policy. They say, okay. Then he gets elected and says, nope, I'm going to play things my way. They go, okay, you're under arrest. We're going to criminally charge you now. It doesn't matter who you are, if you're the president or not. It doesn't matter if the people want you elected. If the Democrats win the ability to criminally charge a sitting president, no election will ever matter ever again.
Yeah, I mean, I think that does make sense. And I don't have a whole lot of faith in most of the judges and judicial system that is trying Trump. I think that most of these cases should have been thrown out. I think the one in about what was it? Actually, no, I'm not. I think maybe Georgia has something, but either way. So I don't have any faith that that the judge will decide, in a fair way.
If you listen to these judges, you would come to the conclusion they will not judge in a fair way.
I mean, so I mean, as much as again, this goes back to my point of why I'm so black-pilled. I don't think that the justice system is treating any of this fairly, and the people that are prosecuting tend to be Democrats. The opposing party. It just doesn't. I don't see how this is in any way fair. Why the American people aren't saying, look, this is clearly political and making more noise about this.
Well, yeah, I mean, why would we expect a fair outcome when none of this is fair to begin with? The fact that he's even gone to trial. Donald Trump has been more investigated and he's been he's had more charges brought up against him than any president in recent history. And are you going to sit here with a straight face and tell me he's been the most corrupt? That's ridiculous.
No.
More corrupt than George Bush, more corrupt than Bill Clinton, more corrupt than Barack Obama. It's completely
we're in modern
insanity.
Warfare. We are absolutely watching the erosion of the republic. Did you guys see? Was it a couple days ago that senator from New Hampshire said, "quote a democracy if you can keep it."
Embarrassing, embarrassing.
Intentionally erasing history. Why? Here's what I try to explain to people. Democracy does not mean rule by majority. They think it does. Democracy means rule by the absolute slimmest of minorities. What people think a democracy will be: 10 people ask what's for lunch, and everyone votes. People think democracy means 6 people say we want pepperoni pizza. Congratulations, you got pepperoni pizza. I'll tell you what democracy is. At Occupy Wall Street, they needed a way to keep supplies dry. So they used to have these things called general assemblies, where the whole group of Occupy gets together and then they'll, petition everybody and then raise their hands and wiggle their fingers if they like things. The idea was, hey, we got a bunch of clothes and supplies that are getting wet from the rain. We need plastic bins to store them so if it rains or snows, they will not be destroyed. Simple, right? Well, you'd think in a democracy, the average person assumes you're going to get a yes or no vote, right? That's not what happened. What happened was everybody said all in favor of buying the bins. The no's have it. Why? Well, plastic is bad for the environment. So we can't have plastic. Okay, well, what's the solution? There's no other material. We're not going to get a glass one. You're not going to get a wooden sealed basket with rubber or anything, right? Well, how about this? How about we get recycled, reused bins? So that way we're not contributing. Okay, now we've got a proposal here. All in favor of recycled plastic bins. The no's have it. Why? Because was this sourced fair trade? Were the workers treated properly? I'm not kidding. This happened. Eventually what happens is, in a democracy, there is only a tiny percentage that actually wants the outcome, and the majority of people compromise with each other to create some wacky outcome that makes no sense. The end result was the vote that won was recycled fair trade plastic bins that are bought off of Craigslist, and you can't spend more than X amount. So what happened? Well, that's clearly impossible. So the people who had access to the money just went to, I believe they went to a supermarket, like a department store, and just bought standard plastic bins for $20 and then brought them in there and then just said, sure, we did what we wanted. If everybody gets a vote on how to run something, you don't get a simple majority. You get this weird amalgamation of the desires of as many people as possible. And then the result is, how many people came out and filled out a form saying, I want this specific kind of plastic bin? 3 out of 100, and that's who wins in the end. That's direct democracy.
Well, so this is actually something a good friend of mine pointed out. He said, like, if you ever tried to make dinner plans with multiple people,
Hell.
it's like it's really difficult. But you know what works out really well? When like you're a kid and you're in the car with your parents and your dad's like, here's where we're going for dinner, and then you just go there and you pick what you want off the menu, right? But where these things always end up is one person just making the decision anyway. So we're kind of fooling ourselves if we think we really have this process where everyone's actually coming together and getting what they want.
Dude, I got an idea. We should totally do this. So Freedomistan, our new studio is done. I should say the new structure, the building's past inspection, it is done. All we're doing now is the actual technical build out for the studio, and then we'll be there in a few weeks. Let's make a video where we give everyone 10 options for dinner, dessert, or let's just do this. Let's just do dinner. We'll say, here's a list of meats, here's a list of carbs, here's a list of vegetables. Vote for which one you like the most. Do you think you're going to get a delicious eggplant parmesan with fresh ricotta on top? No, you're going to get like a beef steak with a scoop of vanilla ice cream, espresso poured around it, some asparagus stalk sticking out of it, and you're going to be like, I am not eating this. But hey, that's what everyone voted for. Most people wanted beef. Most people wanted ice cream. Most people wanted asparagus. Most people wanted espresso. And then you're going to be like, welcome to democracy.
Yeah, it's been referred to as the tyranny of the minority, right? Under that scenario, and there's been a concerted effort for decades now to take control of that word and to foist it up. Democracy. Let's save our democracy. I mean, I get so sick and tired of seeing this too. We're seeing democracy 2024. That's not what our country is. We're a constitutional republic.
It's their country.
That's right.
And I've heard you say this before, where words really have meaning, and Democrats on the left are so good at co-opting that and just putting that out there time and again.
When they say our democracy, they're not including you.
No.
That's right. They really mean our.
Yeah, it's like the way I've described it is 3 guys break into your house, start destroying your living room, and when you walk in and say, get out of my house, one burglar looks at the other burglar and says, he's trying to kick us out of our house. Yeah, he's not calling it your house. He's not acting like you're a part of his plans.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely right. It's always so funny to me because for years and years, what the left did and what they did within the popular culture is they made people laugh at these American buzzwords, right? So they said, oh, come on. Conservatives and right-wingers talk about freedom and freedom. Just the word became a punchline. Oh, it's freedom. Oh, it's America. And of course you say it in a Southern accent because that's peak comedy. And now they'll go, our democracy. This is about our democracy, which is hilarious. There's like throwing around these like dime store patriotic terms without actually thinking about the ideas they're expressing. Like, what do you mean by that? Like, why is this good for democracy? Why is it good for democracy to remove the front runner of the Republican primaries out of the process?
Because they're saying our democracy.
Exactly.
They're not saying democracy. They're saying our democracy.
I agree. And that's my point. They're just throwing this around as a buzzword.
No.
The elite know what they're
hold
doing.
On. I'm arguing with you on this. I'm saying you are incorrect.
And I'm saying that I don't know how much we disagree because the elite are using it that way, but I think your average person who hears that and throws that around or thinks it sounds good doesn't detect it.
My point is, they're saying the fact that Donald Trump could win is a threat to our plan.
That's what the press is saying.
So there's a couple people that are running for the Democratic primary, and I forget the guy's name or whatever, but he tweeted out, "Me and Marianne Williamson are not insurrectionists. Why are they blocking our primary?" And I said, because you running in an election is a threat to their power structure. The quote unquote democracy they have is not a democracy of the people. It's a democratic system of the elites where they get to decide.
Yes.
And if you actually ran against them, you would threaten their power structure.
Absolutely. I'm not talking about that. I agree with you that they have a kind of oligarchy and they're trying to preserve their power. But when the reason they seize onto these words like democracy is because they know your average person who doesn't have time to research or think about these things hears that and goes like, oh, democracy, that's a good word. This is about democracy.
Yeah. I think to a certain degree, but my point is that they're literally saying we are trying to build a new communist system.
Yep.
That we would call like North Korea calls their country the Democratic Republic of North Korea.
Yeah.
Good point.
People's Republic of China.
So
right?
they're saying our democracy is, they may as well be saying our communist dictatorship. They're saying this election, communist dictatorship is on the ballot. They call it democracy.
Yeah. Because that's a nice word. He used good word. I like when he uses good word. When he used good word, he's right.
This goes back.
You're against good word?
This goes back. Yes, I am against good word. This goes back to the point about Maoism, because that was something that Mao said. Like communism the idea of communism is pure democracy.
He's not entirely wrong.
You know, and it will destroy the republic, which is the intent. You know, it's frustrating when you talk to people that get their news from Jon Stewart or from Comedy Central, and they believe all of the messages that are coming out of Comedy Central, and that's really one of the most damaging things that's happened to the U.S. has been the ability of the Daily Show to just feed people the most insane propaganda and have the most ridiculous framing of anything conservative. And it's really been toxic because it's affected the way that people, like you were saying about freedom and stuff, the way that people perceive things that are fundamental to the United States. And the left really has gotten to the point where they hate America. They hate liberalism. You talk to any leftist and they don't call themselves liberals. They call themselves progressives. So
I like Jimmy Kimmel went on this really long rant about Aaron Rodgers. And it was the stupidest thing ever because he was like, calling someone a pedo isn't an opinion. And he threatened to sue Aaron Rodgers. But then he goes on to say he read about the Dunning-Kruger effect, where people are too stupid to realize they're stupid. He said ignorant. But I love this because he should have talked to his lawyer, because publicly stating that you believe the person who defamed you is too stupid to realize they defamed you is an affirmative defense for the person who defamed you under Times v. Sullivan. In which case, if he ever did sue, Aaron Rodgers could say, Jimmy Kimmel admitted it. I genuinely believed what I had said.
And you know
That's
what?
it. Case dismissed.
You know, Jimmy Kimmel also made a dig at him for going to community college, which is hysterical. Yeah. How many of these leftists complain about how expensive college is and about how horrible the student debt crisis is, only to turn around and laugh at people who took responsibility and said, I'm going to go somewhere less expensive. I'm going to go somewhere where I won't rack up a lot of debt.
None of them believe any of the things they're saying. It's all about status. It's all about hierarchy. It's all about kissing their own butts.
I want to point out, Aaron Rodgers never said Jimmy Kimmel was on the list. He said Jimmy Kimmel is probably worried the list may come out. And the interpretation by most people was that he was implying Kimmel was on the list. Maybe. Or I stated this before the Epstein documents were released, and there's more coming out every day. Jimmy Kimmel came out and said, I've never met with Epstein. I never flew on his plane. Well, Aaron Rodgers didn't say that. But I actually think there's a very good reason that Jimmy Kimmel is sweating bullets over these documents. And that is, it has been reported that he was in business with, what's the guy's name? Andrew Perry Lang? He was in business with Epstein's personal chef, who owned a restaurant. I think it was called APL. Jimmy Kimmel was good friends with him. Jimmy Kimmel may be worried about the release of this, not because he's on the list. He could be peripherally mentioned, but because his good friend is on the list. So Aaron Rodgers said a very basic statement, which probably is true. Jimmy Kimmel has reason to be worried. And it's not just Perry Lang. It's many people in Hollywood who may appear on these lists who are friends with Jimmy Kimmel. So if those lists come out, and it turns out that a good friend of Jimmy Kimmel was deeply involved in what's going on with Epstein, and it's true, this guy was Epstein's personal chef, Jimmy Kimmel may be worried that could damage his brand or his net worth or something, even though he's not accused of being a pedo.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you're not willing to be friends with pedophiles, you're not going to have very many friends in Hollywood.
I know. You'd basically just be by yourself, hanging out, ostracized, and then you'd make a documentary where they'd call you all a liar, even though you're a victim. How about we jump to this story? Ladies and gentlemen, it's the moment you've all been waiting for. Newsweek says, secret tunnel under New York synagogue sparks chaotic scenes. But I will not bury the lead. I will simply just play for you this video so you can all say, holy, what the is going on? For those that are listening, the video depicts a Jewish man climbing out of a secret tunnel in the sidewalks of New York City, swatting at the camera, and then running away.
It looks like a skit.
And again, my favorite tweet from this is, imagine seeing a Jewish man climb out of an underground tunnel in New York sidewalk, not having your camera to film it, and trying to explain to your friends what you saw without sounding like an anti-Semite.
It's already been a wild year, man. This is insane.
So the story is, there's a secret tunnel built under a New York synagogue. The police show up. Cement trucks come to fill in the tunnel. Soiled mattresses are pulled from this crevice. Young men then rip the walls down, this wood paneling, and break through the wall to try and occupy the space to stop the construction crews from cementing it in. When the police show up, young Jewish men fight the police, and a dozen are arrested. And now everyone is saying, what the is going on with secret Jewish tunnels in New York City?
The Jews are hanging out with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So I have a friend
that would be the cool explanation.
That would be the fun one. I have a friend that is a young Jewish man that lives on Long Island, and he sent me some information about this. Apparently, there is a sect of young Jewish men that are considered they're Israelis from a fringe sect of Judaism to come to the U.S. as teenagers to study with little to no supervision. They have no money, awful living conditions, and no regard for anyone or anything outside of their ridiculous beliefs that essentially amount to treating the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who passed away in the 90s, as a deity. They consider him to be the Messiah and refuse to acknowledge that he is no longer alive. The rumor is that they dug the tunnel so they'd have unrestricted access to the main synagogue here when it's closed, as it was for a bit during COVID. Apparently the Rebbe used to give dollars out every Sunday along with other blessings. People would line up. So he was an icon, and there's a sect of Judaism that thinks he is the Messiah. And apparently they had an underground tunnel because they were fighting the man.
So do you think that's what this is?
Look, when I saw the police coming in and then these young men start fighting cops, I'm like, zealotry. Ideological zealotry. There's 0% chance you save this tunnel once they've discovered it. The idea that a dozen young Jewish men could fight the police off and preserve this was insane. The only reason they would then do it is if their ideology was stronger than their logic. In their minds, they're thinking, I know we'll lose, but for this reason, we must fight to protect our secret tunnel.
Yeah. I think it's hilarious. I've got the Wikipedia. The guy that they're talking about that has passed away, his name is Menachem Mendel Schneerson. I swear to God, I'm not making this up. I'm going to copy the Wikipedia on the guy.
I got it right here.
Yeah. So
Menachem Mendel Schneerson.
Yeah.
So he's dead.
Yeah.
But they believe he was a deity or something?
This particular sect apparently believes that he is the Messiah, and he was well loved by people in the community, and I guess in according to Jews and stuff. But there are people.
The leader
that
of the Shabbat Lubavitch movement.
How do the tunnels come into play here, though?
They didn't want to be held down by the man. They wanted to be able to get to synagogue, man.
Oh, this was because of the COVID lockdown.
Well, that's what people say. That's what people say, but it's years later now, right? They're still not locked down. So why would people still? I gotta
be honest. If If young men built tunnels so they could go and worship their First Amendment right when the oppressive dictatorship of the state was trying to suppress their constitutional right, that's based.
Yeah, I mean, 100%.
Don't fight cops.
But what? Yeah, but what are
You know?
what are they still doing down there? If it's, I guess if you have a cool tunnel, like you still use the cool tunnel. But
Yeah.
it's, I don't know if that's the explanation.
They are men.
There's got to
They're
be
guys.
something else. Yeah,
But
exactly.
there's a very interesting question to be had in this case. What we saw in New York with the shutting down of churches and synagogues was unconstitutional. Judges had ruled it unconstitutional, and Cuomo said, "Go ahead, I'll just make another executive order and shut these things down." The people who were committing the crimes were the police officers trying to stop people from expressing their First Amendment rights. The Constitution's the law of the land. In which case, these young men who built a tunnel to be able to go into the synagogue to worship when they were being oppressed by the dictatorship, by the communist authorities, they were in the right.
Yes, clearly. I mean, the lockdowns were the most clearly unconstitutional, especially when in the context of people that wanted to go and practice their religion. I personally am not a believer, but it's protected in the Constitution clearly. There's no ambiguity about you know, you have the right to assemble and you have the right to practice your religion. There's, you know, I mean, the country can't make, the state can't make laws regarding religion. So clearly they had no authority to do that. And there's been no, you know, nothing's happened since. Nobody lost their jobs. No one got fired, you know, and
Let's segue this story about secret Jewish tunnels in the most likely and appropriate direction. Civil War. So when we are now dealing with a question of at what point, let me put it this way. This show is always about being on the correct side of law. Don't break the law. You handle things appropriately. If the cops come to stop you, you comply, and then you fight in court because fighting a cop on the street doesn't do anything for you. There are limits, however, and people ask this question. At what point must you defy a police officer? Well, obviously, if the police officer is committing a crime, you are not obeying the law by obeying a police officer who's committing a crime, right? Like if a cop went and was robbing a bank and then ordered you under threat of law to help fill his duffel bags, you should not do that. I mean, well, I'm not going to tell you what to do because if he's threatening your life.
Yeah.
But if he says, if you don't do this, I'll arrest you. I'd be like, bro, you're the one committing the crime. I'm not going to do this. Herein lies the big challenge. We are dangerously close to this point. Nay, we are already in it, where we are seeing police officers engage in illegal activity. We are seeing Border Patrol officers engage in illegal activity. And this issue of the tunnel under the synagogue brings up a really important question. Sooner or later, it will be impossible to answer what is the right side of the law. So again, what we say is you see a video of a guy and he's being stopped by the police and he fights the cops and the cops defend themselves and the guy dies. And then everyone's like, oh, the cop's racist. And I'm like, dude, if a cop is stopping you, don't fist fight him. You keep your mouth shut. You put your hands behind your back. Then you get in touch with your lawyer and you win in the system, which we have built to deal with these things. But what happens when the police are shutting down churches illegally? And now the police are basically kidnapping and threatening you with violence without actual authority. The problem there is the New York City government asserts the authority to do it. The Constitution says otherwise, and the judges have said otherwise. How would we advocate? Would we tell you, no, these cops are committing crimes, you should ignore them? Then YouTube says, nope, the cops are always right. What's the stance that the broadcasters will take?
You literally, honestly, if you're going to actually talk about this as a realistic situation, the cop's got a gun. You do what the cop says. The long and short of it, the guy with the gun is the one that you listen to. Get out of that situation because you're not going to win a gunfight, and the government's not going to say, this is good.
No, hold on. A guy shows up wearing a badge that says the New Republic of New York, and he's got a gun, and he's wearing a uniform, and he says, "You now are under my jurisdiction. We assert authority here." Do you listen to him?
You are at that point. There's someone trying to force you to do something that is illegal. You have been kidnapped by that guy, and you get away from them. You escape if possible.
My point here is that you're making the assumption that the person wearing the badge of New York City is operating under any kind of constitutional authority.
No, I'm by saying you should escape. I'm making the assumption that they're illegitimate.
The point here is this is the point that I've made numerous times as it pertains to these stories. What happens if someone knocks on your door and you go, and there's a clown in total clown garb standing there. And you're like, who are you? What do you want? And he says, I am the Clown Bureau, and we are here to arrest you. We have a warrant. Would you actually listen to the Clown Bureau?
Not
I mean,
Of
look, the
course
ATF shows
not.
up at everybody's house every now and again.
Right. But the point is, you clearly recognize a man in a clown costume is no legal authority. That's absurd. What happens when a person shows up claiming to be law enforcement, but the view and the confidence in the system is thus that you look at it like a clown costume? Like, the easier way to explain it is a guy shows up wearing a badge. You're in California, and he has a new Californian Republic badge, sheriff. And you're like, there's no such thing as the new California Republic.
So you're essentially asking what happens when the government loses legitimacy with the average person, when the authorities do.
What happens when it's split and no one knows?
Fair enough.
So right now, it's very simple to say if the police show up, you just you adhere to the system, you get a lawyer, you fight it the best way possible, which is in the courts. But what if the police start killing people? What if a police officer? What if I mean, look, let's just entertain what this tunnel that they built allegedly was so that they could keep going to church, to synagogue, when they were illegally barred from doing so. We saw in New York, the police were barricading parks, locking them up, and shutting down schools. They were spying on schools. There was one video where a guy's restaurant was closed. He had his door open because he was cleaning, and a health inspector came in and gave him a fine for being open. He goes, I'm not open, I'm closed. And they were like, your door is open. And he was like, what? If someone claims they have the authority of government and are violating the law, we cannot advocate that you adhere to a man who's breaking the law. Right. That would be telling you to actually be party to lawbreakers. But we have seen police break the law under color of law. We are at this point right now since COVID. And the question more seriously is on the southern border. Federal law enforcement are assisting illegal immigration. They're committing crimes.
Yeah, this is why it's so important. Elections matter. Elections have consequences, right? We have to have people in an executive role or in government that are representing us. They're supposed to be representing us. That are looking out for our. And this COVID example rings true in my own community where I was a mayor. And I said no. I said no to mask mandates, no to vaccine mandates. As one of the very few, I had our county authorities call me and say, you need to be enforcing social distancing at your parks, and your cops, your city cops, they need to be enforcing mask mandates and handing out fines. And I said, go pound sand. I mean, this is not, and that's what we need to do. We need to find people that have exhibited that type of courage and that backbone and support them in office. Otherwise, we get what we have today.
I think that whereas I do think that the point you're making is correct, I think that it is far worse of a situation in that it's not about finding people that are running that have these policies or that are talking about these policies. It's that it's convincing the people that are voting that these are the correct policies. I think that there are people that say, hey, I would do this, I would do that are at least pointing in the right direction. And I feel like the average person has been, again, talking what we were talking about earlier, what I was mentioning earlier, how the average person has been so indoctrinated by by Comedy Central's, a call on politics that they don't have any understanding of why the policies that they're hoping for won't work at all. They don't have any understanding of history. And I think that that's the majority of our problem is the people that are now in HR departments and work in government and stuff like that and leading in political positions in cities across America. They've all been taught that liberalism is not actually the system that we should be supporting. And so I think we need people, we need a society that values these things. And unless we have that, we can guarantee that they're going to vote for frivolous, ridiculous things that don't work.
Yeah, I mean, I want to ask you a question about this because one thing that we're constantly saying on the show, and one thing I think basically everyone in this sphere is saying nonstop, is that we need people to actually stand up for their values. It's great to have the right ideas. It's fantastic to know what's going on. But ultimately, when push comes to shove, you have to be willing to stand up for them. So I'm curious, what inspired you to actually take a stand and say, we're not doing this mask mandate stuff? And when did you reach this conclusion? Because I could just say personally, when this all first started happening, I want to say for the first couple weeks, I was a little nervous, right? And I thought maybe this is something and I will wear a mask. But I want to say by the time we got to April or May, I was really not with it anymore. And then I just remember when the media was completely okay with BLM rioting, and when doctors literally signed a note saying that was acceptable, I went, oh, it was just nonsense. But yeah, I'm curious, like, at what point did you come to this conclusion, and what inspired you to stick to your guns there? Because a lot of people weren't. A lot of elected leaders were not.
No, and sadly that's true. But I think just inherently I knew that this was wrong. And right away in about March of 2020, I went on and said quite vociferously that I was opposed to any mask mandates whatsoever. And then news came back around in May, I believe it was, of 2020, where I said yet again, look, I am not going to be utilizing my police department to enforce these things. I think it's heavy-handed. This is not constitutional, and maintain that stance for the entire time. So it is. I think you're absolutely right, Phil, that we have, unfortunately, it's not just certain media channels, but it's the educational system that we have in this country where we have dumbed it down so bad. And more than that, we're actually teaching people the wrong things. Yep. We have so few people that are, I think, economically and civically literate. Yep. And it's just unfortunate.
Or just literate. We were talking. No, I mean it. We were talking about this earlier today, and I'm not just talking about low reading scores. What I'm saying is, with widespread literacy, it seems as if we became satisfied teaching people to be able to sound out letters and then know what the word was, without actually being able to truly comprehend the deeper message of what's being said.
This is a typical argument against mass literacy programs that I've heard from.
I'm not against mass literacy programs. I just think like, they're not real literacy programs. We're teaching people like how to sound words out. We're not actually teaching them how to really truly read.
There was this great article I read a long time ago. One of the things that played a factor in me not going to college, that argued that college is great for the people who've decided college is the path for them, in that you grow up building computers and you want to go somewhere where you can learn to build computers better. You have the capability to build computers and you want to learn from the best. What we did then is we said everyone should go to college no matter what. The problem there is this article said something like you need an average IQ of about 110 to actually go to higher learning. That means you can read and not just memorize, but actually comprehend the idea that is shown to you. And the problem now is by telling everyone to go to college, people of 100 IQ will easily memorize the literature, but not actually understand what it means. What ends up happening then is after a few years, they'll have this jumbled up, confused concept, which they think will make them smart. They think they're smarter than everybody. They actually have no idea what they're talking about. Mm-hmm. That, I think, is a good example of what's happening in this country.
You see a lot of that. Also, people will throw this stat around and they'll mention like, oh yeah, to graduate from college, like on average, your IQ is going to be around 110, 115. But I think that's outdated. I'm almost certain that's not the case anymore.
No,
I think the average college grad probably has an IQ of like 105, maybe 100 even.
Well, the average IQ is 100. That's the point.
No, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. I don't think the average college grad is that far above average anymore.
No, I agree.
I don't think they're 110, 115.
Yeah, I think the issue is often brought up. We have a lot of midwits in the political space. These are people who are slightly smarter than average, but not really smart enough to grasp these broader concepts. And so you end up with, an example would be when Elise Stefanik says, I will certify the she's asked, will you commit to certifying the 2024 election? She says, yes, if it's constitutional. And then NBC, because these people are scumbags and they're evil, report Elise Stefanik refuses to commit to certifying the 2024 election. The midwit is the Democrat who then goes, whoa. They understand enough of politics. They read into it, but they're not smart enough to grasp how they're being manipulated.
They don't have a minute to think like, well, wait a minute. When should somebody certify election or commit to certifying an election? They just were like, whoa, they didn't do the good thing.
I'll give you an
They're
example.
saying they won't do the good thing.
Salt in cookies. Did you know that you put salt in your cookies when you make them?
Yes.
How many people have you ever run into? Because I've run into a lot where they get mad. I've been in numerous occasions where I've been baking cookies, and when I pulled the salt out, they said, don't put salt in it. What are you doing? Because they thought you don't put salt in desserts, which you literally do.
Wow, recipes.
But there are a lot of... Yeah.
Those must be terrible. Yeah, knowing those cookies that didn't put any salt in them. Yeah.
But a lot of... They don't understand the point of putting salt in food.
Right, yeah.
And so they think cookies have sugar, not salt. Don't put salt in it. Mm-hmm. Someone who is smart enough to understand recipes can make cookies, but not smart enough to understand that yeah, sometimes things sound counterintuitive.
Well, it goes
but
back
makes
to our
sense.
educational system because they don't teach. I mean, the whole word educate, I think in Greek or Latin, is to discover within, right? And that used to be the process. You would go and actually try to become educated. You would learn. You would have deductive reasoning, critical reasoning skills. So you would learn not just reading, writing, and arithmetic, but you would learn how to debate somebody, right? You'd have these conversations. I mean, try pulling an average person in on this show and have them just think and debate. I mean, sadly, that's not happening. And I think it's endemic of the educational system that we have today. People just can't think for themselves. So that is part and parcel what I think you're going to say. That's really a communist ideology.
I was
just
actually
to
gonna,
give somebody. Here you go.
No, I was just going to bring up the fact that man on the street is a thing that everybody does for a reason because there are plenty of hilarious people out there. So
I want to pull up this story here. It's a tweet from Mike Benz. He says, watch the incredible moment that a rep from the Pentagon Psychological Operations Research Firm pitched NATO's military PSYOP center on turning Taylor Swift into an asset for the Western military alliance to stop disinformation on the internet.
Excuse me?
Well, let me play first the beginning.
So the first one, that's the most famous and the most common, is working with famous people or main influencers to share information or a particular message.
Okay, now I'm going to pause real quick. The image being displayed at PsyCon, that's a CY Con, it says identification and segmentation. In the identification era, it shows Taylor Swift, and it says goal. Identify key actors to train and spread desired messaging. Example, encourage opinion leaders to share counter IO content. Risk, opinion leaders may not want to share content or may accidentally share misleading content. Let's play more.
So I include Taylor Swift in here because...
Are you fucking kidding me?
So yes, Mike is clearly enjoying that they've included Taylor Swift in here, but I must stress, many people have been accusing Taylor Swift of being a psyop or being in on psychological operations to some degree. This is an example being given. From what I can see here in this clip, the woman did not say, we literally are working with Taylor Swift. She says, I use Taylor Swift as an example. However, that being said, what people need to understand about the potential for psychological operations and high-level influencers are in on it, it's that, who was it? I think I was talking to Seamus about this earlier. We were talking about who's possibly a Fed in media.
Yeah.
We're talking about Ray Epps.
We have a little cork board with Tim takes Polaroids of people when they do the podcast, and we put them on the cork board.
And then we have
a
this
bunch of yarn,
red string we tie around the thumb tip.
And we're trying to figure it out.
We actually don't.
We've weeded a couple out, I think.
But we were talking about who may actually be Feds. Mm-hmm. Let me inform all of you guys. There are no Feds. There are Feds. There are federal informants. But the idea that people working in media are secretly federal informants is just absolutely not the case. The idea that Taylor Swift is a handler, I would say, is absolutely not the case. But I will tell you what is very likely the case. I explained this a long time ago, and I'll explain it to you all again. You can go on Google Ads and choose to run advertisements of any sort on any channel you want. So let's say you want a particular kind of political content to be successful. If the CIA or the FBI wanted certain messaging to be dominant in this country, all they would have to do is create a proxy company, go onto Google Ads, buy ads at high rates on an individual's channel. Let's say they're like Freedom Tunes, Seamus's channel, and they say his content he's producing well, let's put it this way. Let's accuse Timcast. Let's go with Timcast. We are anti-establishment, but we're not super far right or anything like that. We're fairly moderate on the political positions, but we're very anti-establishment.
Notice he had to switch to Timcast to make that point. He's like, Freedom
Tunes, because Freedom Tunes is just too far out there. But so the argument would be this. If the federal government liked that, for instance, after Donald Trump was defeated by Joe Biden in the 2020 election, and I don't mean fairly, I'm literally saying Biden is in the White House. The feds then go, look, we got a bunch of conservatives over here saying Trump won. Then we got someone like Tim Pool who almost agrees with them on all these other issues. So he's got a big portion of the audience, but he is saying Joe Biden won. What do? Nobody emails me Nobody comes here, knocks on the door and says, Mr. Poole, we'd like to pay you to say these things for us.
Yeah.
What they do is they target people who they think have the message they like, buy ads indiscriminately and just discreetly on Google. And what I mean is they'll just indiscriminately, as in they'll pull up a big thing of people and just throw money at them. And they don't care what you say. They don't ask you to say things. They just funnel money secretly through an automated programmatic system. So when people argue that Taylor Swift is a psyop, they don't need to send someone to ask her to do it. What happens is Taylor Swift makes music. People like it. Taylor Swift then says, I'm voting for Biden and Kamala Harris. They say, we really like that message. Let's use one of our proxy companies to sponsor her next tour and give her $1 million. That $1 million will go towards her expanding her business. That's the game.
Yeah.
That's how they run psyops.
Yeah, we were talking about this. Also, you got to remember, it's not as if you have to pay people to believe things that are wrong. Every time someone says something that another person disagrees with, they'll go you're a grifter. You're only saying that because there's a financial incentive. As if no one has ever been incorrect about anything because they just came to the wrong conclusion on their own. It's sometimes people just believe things that are wrong. In fact, it's crazy. Most of the time, people believe things that are wrong.
Right.
And you don't have to believe that the federal government is paying somebody. The reality is, we live in a system where people are not encouraged to choose virtue. When you're not encouraged to choose virtue, you're going to take the path of least resistance as often as possible. And that means falling in line with opinions that are more popular because it's difficult to argue for unpopular opinions. That's all it is. You don't have to fund anybody. You don't have to run any kind of special operation to get pop artists. Come on. Why does someone just think about it. Why does someone become a pop artist? Why does someone become a famous actor? Because they want to be liked. Exactly. So as long as the culture says being liked means having these opinions, then they're going to have those opinions. You don't have to blackmail them. You don't have to give them money.
I partly disagree. A lot of people who get famous end up not liking being famous and they quit. They try to hide. A lot of people who get famous enjoy being famous. It's not absolute. So when I look at someone like Taylor Swift, I don't know so much that when she was a little kid, she said, I wish I was famous, other than she made music, the music got popular, and now she's famous. There are certainly people who want nothing but to be famous, and what do you see? They make up fake garbage on social media for clicks and likes, and that is a lot of people.
But even when it's not a pursuit of fame, and I'm not saying that there are no famous artists who just believe in their craft, but any kind of performance art is going to disproportionately attract people who are attention-seeking and want large crowds to like them.
Yeah. It's it doesn't have to be a formal conspiracy anyways. People are just doing what they want to do. They're doing what's best for them,
There's a much easier PSYOPs conspiracy that we all already know about. And I will stress it again. The feds don't need to go to any individual creator and offer them money or recruit them and they're secretly CIA. It's actually much easier. They send a national security letter to Facebook and they say, we want your algorithm to prop up this kind of content.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, and I think this is
ban this kind of content.
This is where this is part of where things actually start to get really scary. I remember there was something my dad said to me when I was in high school. I asked him, do you believe in any conspiracy theories? And he said, no, the government doesn't need to cover anything up because the media will just call you racist or sexist or homophobic or evil if you point out things that are actually happening and try to destroy you that way. But nowadays, that's not working like it used to. So they actually do have to interfere in ways that they didn't before because they don't control information as tightly as they used to, which is why we saw, as Tim alluded to, the White House communicating with Facebook about what kind of information should be allowed on that platform.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is not something that really should become any kind of surprise. We've talked about it, here all the time. So
you're saying that Taylor Swift is working for this?
Yeah, you think? Taylor
I don't know that. I don't think that anyone, or I don't think that there are actually assets like that. I think that the incentive structures that are built up don't require that.
Yeah.
It's the same thing when it comes to the deep state, right? All the deep state is your average people that are bureaucrats that don't change when the administration policy, the policy.
But how cool would it be
if she was a Fed?
Taylor Swift was
at January 6th telling people to riot?
She's down there going
she's like Ray Epps. She's
no. I was say, how cool would it be if 34 years ago, two people are recruited by the CIA to have a child, which would go on to become a pop star to influence and control the minds of the youth. And then you've got like 7-year-old Taylor Swift learning like, I don't know, Brazilian jiu-jitsu and like Krav Maga. And then they're like, next up will be your piano training. And they like teach her to sing.
That's
and
hilarious,
like the whole
dude.
thing was one big military psyop to control the world's population.
Getting into
Isaac.
Getting into the Donald Trump was a Soviet asset territory.
All right.
I just like the
Trump
idea.
Trump was the
Deep state,
Soviet
yeah.
attempt to raise someone, but they kind of screwed it up because they had like a lack of, proper resources, and then Trump went rogue and became like a world leader in the other direction.
I like the idea that Taylor Swift is like a Fed in the sense that
Right.
people usually call attractive women online Feds. Like she's like in people's DMs telling them to commit gun crimes
There
and
are-
stuff. She's like, what if you drilled another hole? Like,
There are no women online. Remember that.
that they're all
Right.
Feds.
These are
Every
all
woman
Feds.
online.
are
If
Feds.
a woman appears even remotely attractive on the internet, she is a Fed. That's
Yep.
factually true.
That is true.
That's the thing that's true about MMORPGs, right? You'll see like a female character. It's just a guy playing a female character.
That's right.
It's like women
That's
are playing
right.
Candy Crush. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. No, that's a fact. That's actually true.
Women overwhelmingly play. I love these reports where they're like, women now make up 51% of gamers, and it's like, yeah, but you mean like Candy Crush and Angry Birds? They do.
They do usually.
That's hilarious.
Like, how many
what
women
they
are
play.
playing Baldur's Gate 3? Like a small percentage. You know what I mean?
And you know what? Women get so mad, and I'm saying this as a non-gamer, okay? But women get so mad at guys for playing video games. You don't hear guys out here knocking Candy Crush going like, I hate that my girlfriend plays Candy
Crush is fun, dude.
But the girls are like, why is he always playing Call of Duty?
That's because they
It's
want-
like, look at the apps on your own iPhone, okay? Look at the games you're playing.
Like every guy knows
Those aren't the
this.
games they play. They play games with your
Remember,
head.
remember when it was fresh and fit? They said women don't have hobbies,
Yeah, that's true.
and they were
Is
like,
that-
ask.
why would he say that?
That's what
But
I said.
it's like it's because from a male perspective they don't. Like women obviously have hobbies, but from a male
just don't
perspective
view
they
them the
don't.
same way. Right.
So, like if I go to a skate park, there's going to be one woman for every 15 or 20 guys. If I go to the poker room, there's going to be one woman for every 15 or 20 guys. When you go to these kinds of things that guys normally do, you don't see that many women. However, I don't know, is like getting your hair done and like fashion a hobby? Some people argue it is. And so
Yeah.
it's like, what do women enjoy doing? It's just not the same as what guys enjoy doing. So guys don't see women around all the time.
Well, also, so this is my theory, and I think this is actually validated by a lot of the metrics we have, like IQ, for example. But I think it applies across a wide span of human activities, where men either tend to be like really good at things or really bad at things, whereas women tend to be more average. So again, we see this with IQ. Men and women have the same average IQ, but men are more likely to be smart or dumb, whereas women are more likely to actually
The
just be
greater
average.
male variability hypothesis.
Exactly. And so I think that's why you see men in a lot more of these hobbies. I think men are just more likely to become obsessive over something and get really into it, whereas women are more likely to be normal.
Generalize.
Yeah. Yeah, to generalize. No, it's true.
To be normal.
That's one of the cool things about being a man is like there is this proclivity to just find something you're really interested in and obsess over it. And I think that women have that to a degree for sure, but it manifests very differently.
Let's jump to the important news here. Michelle Obama says she's terrified about potential outcome of 2024 election. She's running. So the other day, a top strategist for JP Morgan said that Joe Biden will drop out in March following Super Tuesday. I believe this makes the most sense as of right now. It doesn't mean it's absolute, but it makes sense. Why? Many people said Joe Biden can't drop out. It's too late to hold a primary. Okay, but that's actually the best thing Democrats could do. Keep Joe Biden in the race until it is too late to hold a primary. Due to a medical issue, he is forced to bow out. And then because they can't have a primary, they get to appoint someone, the DNC does, bypassing the potential for Marianne Williamson, RFK Jr., or Cenk Uygur, stopping them from winning the nomination. In this instance, with this story emerging of Michelle Obama now popping up and saying she's concerned about the outcome of 2024, I think there's a really great opportunity right now to put a wager on Michelle Obama winning the Democrat nomination or being the nominee against Donald Trump because, well, she's terrified about the potential outcome of 2024. Where does that story go? And
Yeah.
why is she being asked?
Exactly.
Because in 1 month, she says, my fear of what's to come in 2024 is so great, I feel like I must do something about it. A month after that, Joe Biden stumbles and falls. Michelle Obama says, my greatest fear has been realized. Our great leader, Joe Biden, has fallen ill.
Someone tied his shoes together and he
month-
tripped, and now he can't be president anymore.
A month later, she says, I must do my duty to prevent my greatest fear from coming to fruition, I must run for the presidency.
Yeah, exactly. It's self-sacrificing, and every politician has to have a narrative like this. We saw this with Joe Biden. The reason I ran for president was because of Charlottesville. I saw it happen on television, and I said I need to run. I saw Charlottesville happening and said I need to be the one running this country. It's like, all right, Joe. But that's the story that he went with, and they all try to have their own little origin story. And so this is clearly hers. She said, I'm just so nervous about what's happening. Donald Trump, he's a criminal. They're going to let this man be president?
If she runs, I think she wins.
Do you really think so?
I would have thought that a year or so ago. I'm not as convinced. Today.
You are black-pilled, man.
No, I mean, look, she's gonna go.
You think she wins the general election?
Yeah, she goes and she sits down with Oprah, and then like all your soccer moms, all your wine moms are voting for her. I mean, the only people that won't vote for her are people that have actual grievance. So the people that are really PO'd about things, the people that have kids, that have dealt with LGBT issues at schools, those people are not going to switch because she's running. But people that are lightly involved in politics, that are middle class, that generally aren't feeling the effects of the economy or inflation. Yeah,
I disagree for one simple reason. These liberal-minded suburban moms, I don't think would vote for a black woman. I think the reason they believe DEI stuff is because they're overtly racist. I believe that the only way you end up with someone preaching about racism but then actually pushing for segregation, like I saw in Sweden, is that they're deeply racist and they're trying to prove they're not. But in private, they're going to be as racist as they can be. Look at all of these liberal personalities who say racist things behind closed doors and they get busted for it or whatever. Like I shouldn't say all these, but like numerous stories over the past few years, and sexist things as well. I'd be willing to bet all of these liberal, Democrat wine mobs in the suburbs would be like, oh yeah, I'll vote for Michelle Obama, and then privately be like, ain't no way I'm doing that. I'm voting for Donald Trump. Tina Fey in 30 Rock. I was going to say Third Rock from the Sun. In 30 Rock, not the alien one, said in the first season, I tell my friends I voted for Barack Obama, but I secretly voted for John McCain. I think a lot of people will claim they're voting for Michelle Obama, and then they'll be shocked when it's actually a narrow race and she doesn't do as well as people think. Not to mention, I don't think that the nostalgia factor is going to play as well as they would hope. Joe Biden came in, he trashed everything, and the issue now is it's not even necessarily about the person, it's about the party. Joe Biden as a Democrat, the Democrats have done so poorly that Michelle Obama could run, and she'll do better than Biden. That's a fact. But I don't know if it's enough to overcome Trump's success in the polls right now.
Yeah, also, I think one massive mistake that the Democrats have made over the past 2 years is they've actually turned parents into a voting bloc in a way that we've never seen before. They've been like, well, I just want to let you know, if you're against porn being shown to children in schools, you're a big, bad, far-right extremist. And then a bunch of parents went, all right, well, I guess I'm a big, bad, far-right extremist then, because I would rather be that than allow you perverts to groom my children. And here we are.
No, you're both wrong. She'll win.
You think so?
Oh yeah, I do. And that's not obviously clearly like I'm not like endorsing Michelle Obama. I'm endorsing at least until the primary. I'm going to vote for Vivek in the primary because he's the guy that's talking about cutting government most. Whoever is talking about cutting the government most is who I'm going to vote for.
I don't know, man. So, I think you're endorsing Michelle. You really seem to want her to win.
Well, anyways, you can think that, and it's cute, but
I like to think here that Tim is right.
I would love it. I would love it. I would like to be wrong. This is not some kind of thing where I'm like, oh man, this is what I'm hoping for. I would love to be wrong. But
Michelle
like I said,
elected.
I am black-pilled as hell on what the American people want, because I don't see, as much as we're seeing pushback against the people that are complaining about Palestine and protesting and stuff, I don't see enough pushback from your normal people for me to be like, oh, the general consensus is not the left-leaning consensus.
It's like the soma of life and everything. It's just so much. There's just nothing really pushing them to really feel like, hey, I got to do something about this. Hey, I'm going to stand up and say something.
I think
I don't know. As I'm traveling around, even in my own state, I'm seeing people that are just being crushed by Bidenomics and inflation, and it's the constant talk. I've done over 50 town halls, and what you just said, I think, rings true. That people are just so fed up with Democrats and Democratic leadership and the lack thereof, and how worse off they are today than they were under President Trump. I hear that a lot.
I hope there's enough of them.
I hope so too.
But that is an interesting thought or comment about how people are, so many Democrats are innately racist themselves.
Oh,
right?
I mean-
and we saw that with, you just made me think of the immigrants that they flew to Martha's Vineyard.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
And to see how quickly within, what was
Well,
it,
yes.
24 hours,
Look-
they just went ahead and...
So there was that Yale study several years ago that found liberals drop their vocabulary level when speaking to black people.
That's right.
And conservatives do not.
Yeah.
And it's really obvious why. Democrats, well, they've always been racist. I mean, it's quite literally their party platform since the early days.
But they're like, hey, we switched the kind of racism that we have.
Yeah, they're still racist. And so if you have your average liberal who encounters a black person and then tries to sound stupid on purpose,
It's crazy.
they're basically saying they think black people are stupid. Whereas conservatives just talk to them like normal people because they just think they're normal people.
It's really
You
insulting.
think a person who does that is going to look at Michelle Obama and think that's the person they want to lead the country? They may publicly act like they oppose racism, but from their own actions, they show that they actually look down on minorities. And when it comes to the private decision-making process, they're going to brag to the high heavens, I just voted for Michelle. I actually voted for Trump, but I'm not telling my friends that because I'll get made fun of. They're going to vote for Trump.
Yeah.
Now, the challenge I think Trump has with a lot of these women, though, is that he's like nasty. A lot of these liberal Democrat women are like, he grosses me out. And so they're going to be put to the test of whether or not to be more racist or disgusted, and whether or not, like, which will play a bigger role. I got to be honest. I think many of these Democrats are so racist, they would say, well, I'm disgusted by Trump, but they'd vote for him because that's how racist I think they are.
That they wouldn't want to vote for Michelle.
And I'm not saying every single one. What we see in the data from this study is that a decent amount of liberals will lower their vocabulary level
Yeah.
when talking to black people because they assume black people are stupid. I mean, look at the voter ID thing. Ami Horowitz with one of the greatest political videos ever made. Have you seen this one?
Yeah.
He goes around asking black people. He goes to Berkeley and he says, do you think voter ID is racist? Like, yeah, of course, because black people don't know how to get the internet and can't get IDs. And then he just goes to black neighborhoods in New York and he's like, do you have an ID? And they're like, yeah. And he's like, do you have the internet? And I love this like 20-year-old guy's like, what do you mean? Even a 13-year-old kid's got the internet.
Yeah.
My favorite, though, was when he asks the guy, one of the Berkeley kids says it's hard for them to get to the DMV. They don't know where it is. And then he asks his older black guy, he's like, can I ask you a question? Do you know where the DMV is? And he goes, yeah, it's over there on 26. He's going to go down here and make a left. Like the guy was asking for directions. It was such a stupid question to ask a guy. He assumed the guy needed help finding it.
Yeah, dude, it's hilarious.
Those people are going to vote for Michelle. Yeah, right.
I mean, a lot of these, I mean, they might because it'll make them feel better about themselves and absolve themselves of their like racism.
The Berkeley
But
kids
what
maybe.
is hilarious to me is that, so for example, like as a voice actor, someone who does voices for cartoons, they'll say about me and other voice actors, like, you could never do a black voice. But then every time they talk to a black person, they try to do this weird impression of how black people speak. And this is exactly what that study's talking about. They'll do that. They'll like start using black slang and they'll as the studies literally show, they will use a dumbed down vocabulary. It's like, this is insanely insulting. And then you get bent out of shape over like a comedian doing an impression of a black person as a joke when you're actually trying to do it in real life because you think that's how you should communicate with another group of people.
So there are times when I'm on tour where I have to go on vocal rest and I'm not allowed to talk, right? So like people walk in the room and I can't say anything.
Everyone must hate that.
It's super annoying. It's the most annoying thing in the world. But people constantly come up and they don't know how to talk because I can't talk to them. And what they start doing is they start whispering or they try to sign. It's like, I'm the one that can't talk, dummy. And I wonder if that's the same kind of thing. They think that the person they're interacting with is unable to, so they try. If it's the same kind of like, not like if they're not thinking about it, it's the same kind of reaction. So, anyways, I just thought it was funny. But,
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's hilarious.
It's funny how if you like focus on race and make that into everything you think about and the only thing that you ever even matters, eventually it becomes the only thing you think about and the only thing that even matters. So
Yeah, they need to
can't be-
pander.
yeah, right.
It can't be any other way like that. If you are constantly thinking about the point of like there was all that talk about critical race theory. The point of critical race theory was to awaken a critical racial consciousness, so that way people would see things through the lens of a racial power dynamic all the time.
Yeah.
That was the whole point. And so people were all focused about, they're not teaching critical race theory, blah 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 in schools, but what they were teaching kids was to see everything in a racialized way,
Right.
and that creates racism. That's what happens.
You don't
Well,
say.
and not just not just in a racialized way, but there's an irony there. It's called critical race theory, but there's only one race you're allowed to be critical of.
Right.
It's literally just white people bad. That's all.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the way that it pans out here, but what it is it's just Marxist power dynamics.
Right, exactly.
So here it's white people, but when it was used in we've talked about the Cultural Revolution,
the
when it
bourgeois.
was used in the Cultural Revolution in China, it was Han Chinese were the dominant
Right,
ethnicity, and so it was Han privilege, and all the stuff that we're seeing here, all the focus on race, it was all already done in China. With different ethnicities that your average Westerner wouldn't know. They wouldn't know the particulars about the ethnicities in China. But there are a lot of different ethnicities, and the same kind of power dynamics were used to justify oppressing the majority that had wealth and stuff like that. So it's not new, and the more we can reveal these things to people, these similarities with some of the most horrible ideologies in human history, the more the better it's going to be. But we have a big job in front of us.
Yeah, I mean, and it's no surprise that somebody tried this, right? When it comes to the division that they've stoked between the races, because the fact that Americans of all different ethnicities and races got along as well as they did in the United States is just unbelievable. It's never been perfect, but for a good chunk of time over the past few decades, it's pretty much been better than anywhere in the entire world where multiple ethnicities have been in one place,
Yes.
including ethnicities that are really, really similar. Whereas in the United States, we have ethnic and racial groups that are far more different than those other ones are, where we see far more conflict. And so it's a miracle that we were able to get things working as well as we did. And so it's no shock. It's no shock that someone trying to upset the system would come in and sow those seeds of discord, because it's a lot easier
Yes.
to destroy something like that than it is to build something like that. It offers the amount of racial and ethnic harmony that existed in the United States offers a tremendous opportunity for evil people to upset the system, because that doesn't exist anywhere else. So it has to be really easy to tear down.
Yeah.
And the way that it's you go about it is by attacking the things that transcend race, which are the fundamental principles that are
that make Americans American.
that makes America Americans. It is first of all liberalism, right? Like, so all of these
conserving liberalism. I think I want to get that point home, because
Yes.
you're conserving liberalism.
Yes.
I think people forget that all the time. They get into liberal versus conservative. You're conserving liberalism if you want to call yourself conservative. Anyways,
Absolutely. And the biggest problem right now that's going on that we have is that the progressives have convinced the Democrats, the liberal Democrats, that they are not liberal. They have convinced them that progressive policies, which are based on racial, based on race or based on sex or based on identity, that are prohibited, specifically prohibited by the Civil Rights Act, that these are
crazy.
Continuations of the Civil Rights Act, when they actually fly in the face of the Civil Rights Act. The people that were marching during the Civil Rights Act in the 60s, they held signs that said, "I am a man." The point was they wanted to be seen as a human being. And Jim Crow laws treated them as less than humans.
Yeah, true.
And now the focus is on, I am black or I am this minority, which means don't see me for my humanity,
Right, see
which
me
it
as
is
my group, as my label.
100%. It is 180 degrees from everything the civil rights movement was focused on. The civil rights movement, it was intended to be liberal because it was intended to treat people based on their humanity. And everything you hear now is based on race and identity, and that it flies in the face of liberalism, and it flies in the face of the fundamental principles that the United States is based on.
Facts, man.
Yeah.
Man, here, dude. here. I couldn't say it better myself.
100%. And I think another reason why that happens is because it's a system of control.
Yes.
If they can have and create identity politics and tribalism the way that they have, we got to get this group against that group. It goes back
easier to divide.
democracy. Yes, much easier to divide. Yeah. You've got these many, these groups that are everywhere pitted against each other. You can control them much more effectively.
Yeah.
Hey, great time we talk about this. MLK, rest in peace. Good time we talk about this. The thing is, I forget what day is the actual holiday is. Did anyone know off the top of their head? MLK Day is what day?
It's on the 16th.
16th. Okay.
Right? 15th,
Yeah.
15th
15th or 16th. Yeah.
Monday.
Anyways, good time to bring it up.
But yeah, I mean the efforts that are being undertaken. The point is to tear at the foundation of the United States. So we talk about how they change the language and how they change the meaning of words. I mentioned this the other night. There's the effort to do land dedications, the impulse to do that. That's all a terrible idea because it gives credibility to the legitimacy of the idea that the land is stolen. Now, throughout history, there's been conquered people throughout history. That's the way, countries have been formed and stuff. And when you cast the creation of the United States in the light of illegitimate, that means that all property in the United States is now stolen property. And that means that the Fourth Amendment doesn't protect it. It doesn't. The takings clause doesn't it's all up for grabs. Once you change the meaning of words, all of the laws that we have, if the meanings of the words change, all of those laws, they're all nothing more than a memory.
Because they're based on ideas.
Yeah.
When you change the words, the definition of the word, and you change the idea fundamentally. So yeah, totally agree. And again, this also ties into how the idea of what Mao did, where he'd be destabilizing on purpose, and then be that stabilizing force. It gives legitimacy to them again. It's all about legitimizing their claim to power. Which is, questionable at best a lot of times. So,
Yeah.
How could you guys say something like that?
Hey.
On stolen land. Sickening. No, that argument was always so ridiculous to me. It's like, okay.
Yeah, it is.
It's like, how can you have justice on stolen land? It's like, I guess we can't have justice anywhere.
Ever.
Literally
forever. For
Everything has been
humanity.
stolen.
Yeah, it's all.
So I just left the room.
Yeah.
I am now back in the room. Our flight tonight was canceled because the blizzards in the Midwest are intense, and the roads are basically shut down. So we got this jet waiting for us, and they said they can't do it. So the bad news is this means that here's the plan. We're going to try again at 10 a.m. to fly out.
Word.
But that means I'm not going to be able to record my morning show as normal.
Oh, man.
But there's a solution. I just have to wake up at 6 a.m.
Oh, no.
and record segments early and try and just record maybe, because I normally record them an hour, but it's over several hours of doing research and pulling up news stories and reading a lot. So they may be what I would describe as lesser segments, like more cultural stories where I'm commenting on like a TikTok video or something, and then just get like 3 or 4 segments cranked out at 6 a.m. so we can make a 10 a.m. flight, which means we will keep the uncensored members only show tonight a little bit shorter than we normally would, in that maybe just a half an hour tonight instead of 45, 50 minutes.
Okay.
So I can get to bed and wake up early, and then we got to fly to Des Moines, Iowa at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. Oh, this is so brutal.
Hey, I heard Des Moines is great this time of year.
I mean, they got a blizzard. And
exactly.
But I think I'm really excited for this event that we're doing. This Vivek Town Hall is very, very important for everything that's going on. So we're going to have to figure out how to make it work, and I can sleep when I'm dead.
Yeah.
The plan is going to be,
That's what I've been saying with this campaign. I could sleep in 6 months.
That's right.
I'll just wait.
You got to get the grind.
Keep going.
Wake up, get it done. Anyway, now that we're back, let's go to Super Chats. So if you haven't already, would you kindly smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends, head over to timcast.com, click join us, become a member, because we are grinding our fingers to the bone for each and every one of you. We may have a sponsor. Our events team has been working through the night to try and find sponsors for the event to help cover the costs. It looks like we may have a sponsor.
Nice.
Won't cover the full cost, but will help alleviate some of the stress. That means if you like the work we're doing and you like the idea of hosting a counter town hall to CNN's fake debate, then support our work. Go to timcast.com, click join us, become a member, and that direct support. It's $10 a month. You can give whatever level you want, but it is powerful. Very, very powerful. Seriously, if every single person who was watching this show right now signed up and became a member at timcast.com, I mean, we'd be able to buy billboards in every single major city. We could be able to buy all the ad space on CNN. I mean, we're talking about 40,000 people giving $10 a month. That'd be amazing. So with your support, we can continue the work we do and be substantially more successful. That being said, smash that like button. Let's read what y'all got to say. Clint Torres, he's back. He says, howdy, people. He has, of course, won the first place position by being the first Super Chat. Jose Alfredo Diaz says first. Sorry, sir. You are second.
Ooh.
Straight Common Sense Asian says, so happy to see you on my favorite newscast. You better nail it. Your wife next appointment depends on it. Haha.
I know exactly who that is. We can shout out to Hung. He's the great happy design nail salon in my city and where my wife goes constantly. And so he is a huge fan. That's great.
All right. I'm just checking on the flights here because
Yeah.
oh, this is going to be so brutal.
Things change fast too.
I know. But we're doing big stuff this year. It's going to be a big year, and we got a bunch of big shows planned. We've got Don Jr. is going to be coming on the show this week while we're in Des Moines because, you know, everybody's trying to get their last-minute pitches in for the caucus, and it's going to be really, really great. All right, here we go. Jacob Parody says, did anybody see J.P. Morgan's 10 Shockers 2024? Well, the one I can mention is that Joe Biden drops out. There were a couple others that I didn't really care that much about. I don't know if you guys read the full list, but I'm sure there's something in there that's probably more interesting or it could be interesting. Right? All right. Western Body says second, vote early, vote often. Yes. Raymond G. Stanley Jr. says simple question, need only simple answers. There's no need for all the meaningless hoopla that makes you sound not confident with your answer. That's right. Yeah, today in the arguments in the Trump appeal on immunity, I'm really frustrated with Trump's lawyer trying to, like, the judge said to the lawyer, if the president committed an assassination and ordered SEAL Team 6 to do it, you're saying that they could not be prosecuted if they weren't impeached. The answer to that is correct. I'm saying that they cannot be impeached. Instead, the lawyer is like, no, it's qualified. Qualified, yes. I mean, like, if he's impeached, and the judge is like, let me try again. Now, it is annoying the way the judges are asking questions, but if you're making a point, it's just as simple. No, the president cannot be criminally charged or indicted unless he has been impeached and convicted. Next question. It's that simple. All right. The silence says, first, no, sir, you're very, very off. Sorry. He says, watch Chainsaw Man peak anime. I've heard of it. I haven't watched it.
It's good.
I'm actually just rewatching Yu Yu Hakusho.
Oh, you like Ghost Detective?
Well, of course, but
Right.
Netflix made
I
a
know that.
live version, which is just so awful.
I'm not even gonna watch it.
It's only 5 episodes, and it tries to condense
It's too many.
like elements of the whole show into one. It's really funny because he like, for no reason, goes to get trained by Genkai, and then he's there for literally 10 minutes out of the show. But then he's like, no, when she dies, and it's just like, what? It just doesn't work. Sorry. Your live action Yu Yu Hakusho does not work. But the actual show itself was awesome.
Yeah, true.
All right, where are we at? What do we have? Zachary McCoy says, why will people say there's no good candidates with this Biden-Trump election again, but not even consider Vivek? We're doomed. I seriously. It's fascinating to me that Vivek is not Trump in terms of character and candor. He's America first. But you have these people like, I'm going to vote for Nikki Haley. I wouldn't vote for Trump. And it's like, well, then why wouldn't you just vote for Vivek? America first, protect the economy, real business experience.
I
guess.
I think it's because I like him.
You're turning everybody off.
You know.
Yeah, poor Vivek, you know, he tells the truth and then the media lies about him. But that's what they do. That's what they do with everybody.
Exactly.
If Vivek went up on stage and said January 6th was an inside job, he goes up on stage and he goes, it's looking more like January 6th is an inside job, and I want to fund the military-industrial complex to blow up foreign countries. And CNN would be like, he's completely right about everything.
He's correct. Yeah.
January 6th was an inside job. More money for the military-industrial complex. But the moment he says we shouldn't be engaging in foreign wars and providing all this foreign funding, they're like, he's crazy.
It's the worst.
Yep. All right. Matthew Rose says, Tim, Jews and tunnels sounds like some World War II-ish. That's actually a really great point.
Yeah.
If it is true that the reason they built the tunnel, and I heard this, is because the city locked down places of worship illegally and unconstitutionally, and they were fighting for their right to worship, they were in the right to do so. And they did so non-violently. I can respect that. Now, I do have concerns about the structural integrity of the building, so, you know, digging tunnels underground can be very dangerous.
And also, I just want to say to all my Catholics, on behalf of all the other Catholics, we are slacking. Like, they have tunnels. Where are our catacombs? Where are the catacombs under the large cities that Catholics live in?
Well, Stephen Bordelmay says, here is some money, some spoon money, Tim. I hear they keep going missing for some reason. Hey, Seamus.
Hey, how's it going?
So this morning, we have these little mugs that are we got from REI. They're like a thermos, but they're mugs.
Yeah, what about them?
Right? And I have one, and Allison has one.
Yeah, those are nice.
And Allison uses hers because when she pours her coffee in it, you can put a lid on it, and it's not quite a thermos, but it's a mug that keeps things warm. Well, hers was gone this morning.
That's
and
weird.
She was wondering where it went, and she noticed that this strange thing keeps happening where mugs from our kitchen keep appearing in the studio building.
That is weird.
As if someone is taking our mugs, who's staying at our house, and then walking out with them, walking to the studio while drinking the coffee, and then leaving it in the other kitchen.
That's really weird.
It is very strange.
Yeah, I wonder why that's happening.
It must be a ghost.
I think you probably should get paranormal investigators, or
the
at
only
least just check
explanation.
the security camera footage on the property for sure.
The only explanation is that a ghost is making coffee and then carrying the cups into the studio, and perhaps the ghost is in the room right now with us.
Yeah, he's only been here for like the last 2 or 3 days.
2 or 3 days.
That would be
Yeah,
a little
it's
bit
really
scary.
weird.
Because why would the ghost get here when I got here?
I know.
I know. The ghost must be following you.
Do you really think so?
Yes, perhaps it's a ghost, Seamus.
Dude, I don't even want to think about that. That's freaking me out. That's freaking me out.
In other words, Seamus is stealing our mugs.
What? Hold on, that's where you were going with that? Are you? That's ridiculous. Hold on a second. We don't actually have any evidence that any of this happened. Alice, I would never.
I look out my window and see Seamus drinking coffee and walking up the hill.
Listen, you guys know me. I would never do that. I would never do something like that. You know me.
The funny thing about
You guys know me.
The funny thing about the spoons thing was that it was like 3 spoons. It was like 3 spoons.
And I didn't even take that.
And Seamus is the one who turned it into this big meme because he wanted attention for himself.
No, that never even happened. I didn't take anything. You guys know me. You know I wouldn't do that.
So what actually happened is like Allison noticed that some spoons were not in the kitchen. She's like, "Oh, there's some spoons that they're not." Like, do you think Seamus has them downstairs? Yeah. And then Seamus comes up and Allison was like, "Oh, did you bring spoons?" And I was like, "Oh, I'll grab them." And then he walks up with like 3 and puts them in the sink. And then Seamus goes, "There's an Irishman living under my house stealing my spoons."
Why would I say that? Why would I say that when I never took your spoons? That's so offensive towards me and my ethnic
Irishman
people.
living under my house stealing my spoons. Seamus made that up. And then when we all laughed at it, Seamus denied it ever happened.
I would never do that.
Anyway.
It's not true. Tim said I made a secret tunnel under his house to steal spoons. I'm like, what is this?
Weren't you
He's
just
like, I
like-
hear
It's called
people
stairs.
speaking-
What are you talking
He's
about?
like, I heard people speaking Irish under my apartment. I have no basement. I don't know where this is.
I saw an Irishman coming out of the ground in front of my house.
And I smacked the camera.
Yeah, and then runs. Zach Ayasi says, be safe in your travels tonight. Most of our roads here in Iowa are listed as mostly covered to travel, not advised, as I'm getting ready for work. Well, the crew said they will not fly. And so we're going to fly first thing in the morning. And I'm just groaning like, ugh. It's so expensive. We just, like, we can't cancel it. Yeah. And, you know, so we're talking with the crew and figure things out. But I'm going to wake up at 6 in the morning and try and record as much as I can to have some segments up. And then, you know, it just... Mitch the engineer says, Tim, can I get a birthday shout out? Also, does anyone know
chicken
if...
sounds.
Also, does anyone know if the Ray Epps judge oversaw any of the rest of the J6 trials, maybe have grounds for an appeal? I don't know if you can appeal based on determinations of different judges like that. But happy birthday, Mitch the engineer.
Yeah, happy birthday.
All right, where are we at? Let's see. Fat Hravsky says, looks like Trump has the perfect defense with Ray Epps. Would you agree? No, because Trump does not want to argue he in any way incited anybody to go into the Capitol. So if he says, I incited people, but look, you can't criminally charge me, then he's just admitting that what they want him to admit. You know.
Yeah, I think just to the contrary, right? I mean, he said many times peacefully go up to the Capitol. I don't think there's any evidence that he's never been convicted of conspiracy. Of insurrection, charged, convicted, nothing, and yet he's going through all of this right now.
Yep,
and that's where I love Vivek. I got to say, he's phenomenal. I mean, I went out when I got endorsed by Charlie Kirk. I was able to meet him. Brilliant guy.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant guy. Donald Trump, I have endorsed because I can see what's going on. The deep state, what we've talked about here. I mean, there's so much going on. Where he has exhibited that strength to stand up and push back. That is exactly what we need right now.
Vivek needs to stay in this race because they're doing everything they can to remove Trump from it. And if something happens in the next few months where Donald Trump is removed from the primary, we are going to be very grateful that we have Vivek as an option in the primary. Now, I don't know what that means in terms of voting for Trump, but this is going to get really wild. And we are looking at 1860 levels of like election, okay? Electioneering and election history. 4 candidates in the election in 1860. We could be looking at 4 candidates this time around. Let's say Donald Trump is booted from the ballot. So he announces, I'm still running. You can't stop me. He runs as an independent. The Republican primary is defaulted through this process to Nikki Haley. Then RFK Jr. runs independent and Joe Biden or Michelle Obama. You have 4 candidates. And what happens? Trump easily wins that 4-way race. No question. And the only way Trump does win if it is split 3 ways like that. Trump's base is massive. It's like 40% of the GOP. They will write Trump in. Mm-hmm. He will lose 60% of that vote, but it will be split among RFK Jr. and a tiny degree. Nikki Haley will not get as much as people think. Michelle Obama may get a bunch, but I think Trump wins the plurality in that regard. Mm-hmm. And that will be a strong justification Democrats will use for either some kind of secession or rebellion, because they'll say, Donald Trump is the president, but only won 29% of the vote.
Yeah.
We'll see, though. Victor Gordon says Cask Brew should work on creamers to pair with the coffees. And I just got my first order today. Love it. I'm sorry, man. Like Appalachian Nights, the Cask Brew blend that we made, like we got the samples, we tried it out. It was my idea. I said, here's what I think would be really good. We'll try it. It is the best coffee I've ever had, no question. It's a dark roast. It's a blend that we came up with. And it's just, man, once you drink Appalachian Nights, I'm sorry, man, it'll ruin coffee for you. It's so good.
Yep.
Seriously, that good. As long as you brew it right. But I'm really excited for the Alex Stein's Primetime Grind, 2 times caffeine that we just put out. A lot of people are talking about how they like certain double caffeine blends, and now they have an option from Cask Brew. Ian's blend is going to be a low acidity blend. We're looking at coffees with low acidity to create the perfect coffee that is low acidity, and that's going to be Ian's Graphene Dream. Yes, and that actually should be coming out in a few weeks. We're really excited for the bags look so cool. I mean, Jessica's such an amazing artist. The graphene style bag and everything, and we're really excited for this. Ian says, let's hope the judges come to the conclusion presidents can be charged. Then every conservative DA can file against Joe and demand he be arrested. Yeah, but come on, they're not gonna. Yeah.
It's just too lazy.
They're gonna be like, oh, geez, what do I do?
Your point presumes. I did cut out there. Your point presumes that anyone in Republican politics at that level is useful.
I'm gonna put you here on the spot, good sir, running for the Senate.
Yeah.
Does the Second Amendment protect the right of children to keep and bear arms?
Protect the right of children to keep and bear arms. Well, I would think it is applicable to every U.S. citizen. So yes,
you are correct. Particularly in most states, they actually have codified the laws as it pertains to children keeping and bearing arms. That means this requires parental supervision or some kind of permitting process, but it is protected. So we saw this with the Rittenhouse case where the argument was, he's not old enough to keep and bear arms. But the provision actually says you can be under the age of majority and keep and bear arms for specific reasons. And if you actually go back in time, you can see where this applies very easily. A 13-year-old kid would be given a rifled musket to go out on the hunt with the father. And so in most circumstances, children can bear arms so long as they're accompanied by their parents. And that makes sense. The next question, put you on the spot. Does the Second Amendment protect the right of private persons to keep and bear nuclear weapons, weapons of mass destruction, and warships?
I'm going to say no.
The answer is yes.
Raytheon,
Boeing, Lockheed Martin are private entities and private persons as per the U.S. Tax law and code, and they're the ones who build our warships and our missiles and our weapons. So yes, private persons, as per U.S. law, do keep and bear weapons of war and mass destruction. So typically...
Private persons to include corporations.
Yes, but it also does mean individuals. Individuals, because the only reason it's a corporation is because the amount of wealth required to do such a thing, and you're going to want to limit your liability. It's like if you're a private person, you're not going to be like, I, as my sole proprietorship, I'm going to build a Hellfire missile, because you'll be very much responsible personally in all your assets. But, I've asked a lot of conservative politicians and liberal politicians, and they always say no. And I'm just like, who do you think's making our bombs? It's private corporations. Yes, you can fill out FFLs and say you're building a nuke. So it's always been the case that the Second Amendment protected the right of citizens to own cannons, warships, etc. I love that factoid because it's actually quite simple. It sounds more complicated and trickier than it is. If someone thinks it sounds unreasonable, you just say like Lockheed Martin and Raytheon are private entities as per U.S. law. They're not the government, regulated and permitted and all that stuff. Of course, but they have missiles. So there you go. It's always been the case, huh? Privateers and corsairs, etc. All right, let's read some more. Paul Tascalo says, Tim, I own a private jet charter company, Vault Aviation. I'll donate $2,500 to a charity of your choice for the opportunity to quote your next trip. P.S. Be prepared to pay a $5,000 plus de-ice fee on your Iowa flight today. Oh, don't you know it? Don't I know it? Absolutely. So the cost of this trip is very, very expensive. It is absurdly expensive. Plus, we've got the deadhead, the storage of the plane while we're in Iowa because it's got to fly us back. And because we're flying back Monday night, it's brutal. And then, of course, we have de-icing fees. Now, we may dodge de-icing because we're flying tomorrow, and it's going to be sunny and cold. So we likely will still have, I think when we're leaving, we may be okay, based on the weather. But, we'll see. Yeah, probably going to have some kind of de-icing fee. I think it's probable, but we may dodge it. But Vault Aviation, let me write that down right now, and we'll take a note of this. I'm writing it down.
Yeah, I hope we're able to make it. It'd be really, really cool if we can. If not, we'll make the best of it. We'll still have some awesome shows.
Yeah, so it's brutally expensive. I mean, it's not been this. I'll just say this: we started flying private because it's the only way we can do some of these shows and make them happen. And I'm not some cringe climate change bleeding heart. I don't mind flying private. Don't complain about it. But the price have been going up substantially, and it's crazy. It's like we're getting a private jet for one trip where we're doing a big show, and it can seat 8 or 9 people, and the cost is usually like if you're flying your crew out there, it's basically twice the cost of first class. Would we give every employee first class? No, but it's like, oh man, the amount of time you save. If we're gonna fly crew out, and I put them on a commercial jet and the jet gets delayed or the baggage gets damaged, we can't set up the show, we're screwed. So it's basically like, welcome to the PJ, ladies and gentlemen, because we're all going to get there on time. We're going to set the show up. We're going to build the studio out. It's a lot of work. We're not going to get any sleep. It's going to be a little bit more expensive than usual, but we're going to have a great show and it's going to matter.
That's right.
That's what it's all about. All right. TRD says, didn't AOC confirm or allude to Capitol personnel aiding protesters in regards to J6 to Alex Stein? Play the video. Well, we don't have the video pulled up, but you are correct.
She did, yeah.
AOC said, why were police helping them? Yeah, well, it's an inside job, according to AOC, according to CNN, according to Joe Scarborough. So I think it's case closed. All right. Monk in Training says, I'm Jewish. Was this tunnel in Brooklyn? The Hasidus is there that Rabbi was a dynamic leader and polyglot. The idea that he's the Messiah is fringe in the U.S., but popular in the Hasidic sect everywhere else on earth. Really?
Interesting.
That's interesting. But he died, 30 years ago?
I think it was the
94.
90s.
94.
Kida says, today Poland president harbored 2 politicians who were sentenced for 2 years by SC for corruption. They refused to leave the presidential palace. After 8 hours of standoff, the police finally went in and executed the arrest. Very interesting. Also, Ecuador is in civil war, I think.
Yep.
Crazy. A bunch of armed gunmen stormed a TV station. Dude, guys, I mean, we should have pulled it up, I guess. Let's talk about this in the members only.
Yeah.
Watch these videos about what happens when social order breaks down. You're like, I can't believe a bunch of armed gunmen in T-shirts stormed into a television broadcast pointing guns at people. It's that quick. Humans can do human stuff, man. The human rules matter little. It's all confidence. The Rabbi X says, Seamus, I was literally taught how to read Hebrew in Hebrew school. Rabbi was completely unconcerned if we knew what we were reading, just how fast and good sounding it was. I can't even read it now. Wow.
That means he was more concerned than the average public school teacher is with ensuring students can read in English.
Yeah. That's crazy.
But that's interesting because that was one thing I always admired. One thing that always made me sad is that Catholics stopped teaching their kids to read and speak in Latin. I think that's a massive loss. I wish I was taught that as a child. So I always thought it was cool that Hebrews still did that. It's interesting to learn, though, that many of them don't care, because that's one of the 3 sacred languages, right? Latin, Hebrew, and Greek.
Steel Toad
Gotta
says,
preserve them.
when an extremely smart individual turns their intellect to activism, they focus that intellect to that desired outcome. Positive or nefarious, they will focus on that objective. You know, I think there's an important thing to mention when it comes to intelligence. When we talk about race and intelligence, there's this like liberal offense that's taken by it that people could have different intelligence averages based on their race. I think that's stupid because it presupposes that intelligence is better than other characteristics without actually addressing any other characteristics of any other race. The assumption there is that intelligence is the most prized attribute of humanity, and I don't think that's correct. I certainly think it's fairly obvious when I went to Thailand, and it was on Chinese New Year. And when I went to this big market, you know what I saw? Over the heads of every person. Because me being 5'10", 5'10 and a half, mind you, the average height in Thailand was lower. It was like 5'6", 5'7". So when I'm standing there, I'm actually taller than everybody. I'm like, wow, this is really interesting. Yes, this racial group has a slight difference in their builds. I went to Sweden and I was short. Even the women are 6 feet tall in Sweden.
Me too.
Yeah. But there was this discussion from Sam Harris. I think it was Sam Harris, and I think it was a handful of other IDW people talking about that it's not as extreme as the media might make it seem when making these arguments, but there's likely a genetic component in intelligence as well as every other attribute. But that is not to say that it determines the capabilities of an entire racial group. Like if you argue that Koreans have high IQs, but then you raise this kid in a civil war with no food, yeah, they're going to be developmentally stunted. Mm-hmm. If you bring anyone from any other country and give them the internet, tutors, wealth, and access, they're going to be one of the smartest people on the planet. I don't think it plays that big role, but fun stuff. I think we should recognize that there are other attributes human beings have besides intelligence that have value. All right, let's see where we at. Hypebot says, Phil is 100% correct about Michelle Obama. The average U.S. voter is basically mindless. Name recognition is the number one thing. Number two is, do I hate this person? A far third place is actual policy. Well, I agree with that. But I just think liberals, and especially like these liberal suburban Democrat moms, are just really racist.
I'm rooting for Tim to be right, by the way.
Well, let's say this. Are they racist?
Well, I think they are, but I don't think they're aware that
it's not even
racist.
a question. Of course, they're like I won't say all of them, but people on the left. I mean, one of the platforms at this point is you have to hate white people. So yes,
but I mean against black people.
If we want to count like soft bigotry of low expectations as racism, absolutely.
And that just means racist with a guilty conscience.
Yes.
Right. Mm-hmm. So they have a guilty conscience. That doesn't mean they're actually going to trust someone to run the country.
Right.
The mentality of these liberal women will probably be something like, I really support the efforts of these poor, underprivileged people, but the right decision for my family will be Donald Trump. Because they're racist.
Yep.
They would discount a person's candidacy based on race. I think that's fairly. I think that's a good bet. Oh, let's go. Thomas TJG says, has Phil ever used vocal rest as an excuse to avoid conversations with D-bags?
On tour, literally every single tour. Every single tour since 2007. Absolutely. Not around here though.
When we were at like TP USA, they've got music blasting, and everyone's trying to talk to me, and I'm just like, I can't talk because I would have to yell, and I'm going on stage later on to do a show, and so then I shut up, and then they just keep talking at me and asking me questions, and I'm just nodding, and I'm like, just not saying things. I'm like, guys, like maybe if the music was all the way low and I could talk in a normal voice, but I'm not gonna yell. Because seriously, talking to someone backstage with music blasting super loud for 1 hour, and then I'm talking like this.
Yeah.
Not interested.
Yep.
That could be a great excuse, by the way. You encounter some woke progressive. You're like, hey, I just can't.
100%.
No, maybe that's what they want anyway.
Probably.
Yeah.
Brandon Hawkins says, Tim, next time you make a pot of coffee, put a pinch of salt in the grounds. You can thank me later. I'll give it a try.
My aunt told me that, but I would always put too much and it would taste salty.
Yeah.
But when she did it, it was really good. It made it very smooth.
Really?
Yeah.
If it's bitter coffee, like at a gas station, you just put a little bit of salt in there. That always makes it not as bitter. It's usually if it's like overcooked or overheated, but
It really has to be like a tiny bit though.
Yeah,
I tried to
very
get the
little
portions as small as possible, and after rooting like
Right.
2 pots, I was like, I'm not.
I'm hanging out at the casino, and the lady walks by, and she's like, drinks? And I'm like, I will have a coffee with 10 cream and no sugar. That's the way you got to do it, man.
And you got dirty looks too, bro. I'm
Yeah,
sure,
and one
right?
guy was like, man, this guy wants a splash of coffee in his cream.
Yeah, exactly.
And I said, look,
You want to drink some
if they
milk?
had heavy whipping cream, I'd ask for coffee with heavy cream. But, you know, they don't. Personally, as a cream purist, I think that half and half is an affront. It's offensive. Okay? You want coffee with cream, you get cream. I was in London, and I was having breakfast at a hotel, and I said, I'll have coffee with cream. And they went, we'll see what we can do. And I was like, okay.
Did they bring you clotted cream?
They brought heavy whipping cream.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And because they don't have half and half.
no, they got clotted
They
cream.
they use milk.
Yeah.
And I was just like, but milk is not fatty. Like when you want half and half, it's because you want to add fat to your coffee.
Exactly.
I just say, look, if you're gonna do like 2 creams, just do 1 heavy cream. Like
Yeah.
it's absurd that you're adding half and half when you can just do a little bit of heavy cream. Use real cream. You know what's going on, man?
Endorsed.
Endorsed. It's very very delicious.
Yes.
It is very delicious. And let's go. Zach Bolden says the live show isn't showing up on YouTube. I had to search for it. That's how it's been since Christmas. Yeah, we know they suppress us, and it's only because fans actively seek the show out that we resist their efforts. It is what it is. But tomorrow's town hall will be live on YouTube, and Monday's show with a live audience will also be live on YouTube, so you don't want to miss it. We're having the town hall with Vivek. It's going to be a podcast town hall hybrid. We'll figure that out. We're going to discuss with our team exactly how we can run it. So it'll be a very open conversation talking about a bunch of ideas. Vivek will have a majority of the floor, but it's still going to be podcast hybrid style. So it's not going to be, like an interviewer saying, tell me about this, and then letting him talk. It'll be a bit of a back and forth, and we'll try and bring in the audience as much as we can. And then the 15th is caucus day, and the caucus begins right on the time we normally go live, 8 p.m. And then we will be live to track the caucus and talk news, and we'll have a rotating panel of guests. It'll be a lot of fun. We're going to have Don Jr. is scheduled to be joining us this week, so he can discuss obviously his father's campaign, and we're big fans of Trump. I know Phil said he's going to be voting for Vivek. We'll see. I'm of course leaning towards Trump, but we'll see how it plays out. There's a lot to be said for what's going to happen. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, share the show with your friends. Head over to timcast.com, click join us, become a member, because it is not just about getting access to the uncensored shows, our documentaries, or other fun programming. It is about joining our mission and supporting the work that we do. If tomorrow I won the Mega Millions, $165 million, the drawing was probably just now. If I won $165 million, I swear to each and every one of you, 100% of that money would be invested into winning the culture war in every conceivable way. No questions asked. So when you become a member at timcast.com, we're not here to build infinity pools or buy Ferraris. We are here to build a skate show, to build culture. The new studio that we have, it's beautiful and it's amazing, but it's all part of a mission in building culture and inspiring young people and raising a generation of people who believe in the Republic, who believe in the Constitution, and meritocracy and individual responsibility. Thank you for your support. You can follow the show at Timcast IRL. You can follow me personally at Timcast. Mayor Staggs, do you want to shout anything out?
Yeah, I just want to give a shout out to my family, my wife Alicia, and my 2 great children, Brendan and Brecklin. They're fantastic. They're why I'm doing this. They really are. It's we've got to save this country. We have to.
Absolutely. Right on. You got a Twitter account anyone can follow?
Yeah, TrentStaggs.com is the website, STAGGS, and at Mayor Staggs on X and social media.
On X, correct. Right on. Thanks for hanging out. Seamus.
My name's Seamus. I run a YouTube channel called Freedom Tunes. We make animated cartoons. We're going to be releasing one this Thursday. I'm happy about it. I think a lot of our videos lately have been really fun. So if you guys want to go over there, check it out, subscribe. I'm also going to be at the Town Hall event this week. Really amped for that. So thank you all for watching. God bless you. Have a wonderful day. And I'll just say, if you want to support me, go to freedomtunes.com. Become a member. You'll get extra cartoons that the public doesn't have, only you have, and you'll have a lot of behind-the-scenes content as well. We have over 50 cartoons there at this point, well over that are just exclusive to the website. So freedomtunes.com. become a member. I love you all.
My name is Phil Labonte. I'm Phil That Remains on X. I'm Phil That Remains Official on Instagram. The band is All That Remains. You can follow us on, let's see, Spotify, Apple Music, Pandora, Amazon Music, the internet.
And I am Serge.com. It is not a website. That is my moniker. It is spelled DOTCOM. This is a great show. Thank you very much for coming. I appreciate it. And I am a Utah man again. Again, one more time.
We have a new cat that we caught, and we decided to name it Seamus. Mm-hmm. And the funniest thing ever is that for the first time, Seamus is back in town to meet the cat, and he's in the kitchen, and little Seamus walks up, and Seamus goes, "Hey, Seamus." I am not calling him that. It's weird.
The first time I called him that, it felt weird. And it's really difficult to have a cat named after you running around. It's like, look, when you guys named a chicken after Luke, I was like, that makes sense, right? And then they named this cat after me, and I'm like, well, it is what it is, and it's all. But the problem is it actually causes trouble because when people say like, oh, like Seamus is crapping in the corner, people think it's the cat.
Ha ha. All right, everybody. We'll see you all over at timcast.com. Thanks for hanging out.